only serving the country through being part of the special forces, what he's done, really risking his life, many exciting stories that he has throughout the years, but also he's in the fight for freedom. And along with many other people that I've interviewed, like Scott McKay and Rodriguez and Kathy O'Brien, and so many patriot, that we believe that it's an appointed time that things are going to shift. And so today's program is sponsored by Exodus Strong. Let's roll that commercial, please.
Feeling tired even after a full night of sleep? You're not alone. Millions struggle with low energy, brain fog, and inflammation every day. And it's not your fault. The modern world wears down your mind, body, and spirit. But what if there was a natural way to feel energized again? Meet Exodus, a breakthrough supplement powered by 7 biblical ingredients and enhanced by the modern science of molecular hydrogen. This unique formula helps restore your energy, reduce inflammation, and renew your vitality naturally. Real people are already seeing the difference. Exodus Strong has been a game changer for me. After just a week, I noticed better sleep, improved focus, and no more afternoon crashes. Go from fatigue to vitality with Exodus. Visit exodusstrong.com/MERI and start your journey today.
Yeah, so exodusstrong.com/Mary, MERI, right in the middle of America. So anyway, it will help you. It really does work. I use it a lot. And I really, instead of drinking coffee, I take Exodus Strong. So anyway, so welcome, Mike. It's good to have you back. It was great seeing you a few weeks ago at the event at the Ahern Hotel. That was an amazing event. A lot of truth tellers. I know you and Tracy Joe were there. I saw Scott McKay, Lewis Herms, so many people that are fighting the good fight. That was a pretty amazing event. I had just done my 8th Open the Heavens event, in May 8th and 9th there. And Scott McKay and Lewis and Kathy were all part of that event. But we're doing our 9th one coming up in Branson on October 2nd and 3rd. We'll talk about that, in a little while, but it's in the heartland of America. So you guys are going to come because we're seeing some amazing thing with God opening these portals up over regions. Because Michael, as you know, we're in a spiritual battle, and we're seeing the fight even just intensify. And so we've had so many different things, news about Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell and this and that. So why don't we just start out with that briefly, because that's kind of on, did he get taken out by a energy weapon, and Mitch McConnell, some really intense things. And I know you had a situation that you actually had a scenario that was fairly scary, that had to do along those realms that I want to talk about as well. But regards to Lindsey Graham, what is your take on what's going on now with Lindsey and what happened with him?
I think his usefulness for the deep state was over, and they took him out. And we're going to see a lot more of that. Mitch McConnell, proof of life. They had a fake picture of him with his wife.
Well, now they're having Lindsey Graham's sister. Isn't that what she's stepping into his place now? Is that what I just heard?
Oh yeah, Lindsey Graham's. Yeah, definitely. So McConnell, he's out of there. Lindsey Graham, he's out of there. Who's going to be next? So there's interesting dates of when these deep state guys, they like to play with the numbers and so forth. So all kind of interesting dates on that. When he departed, 7/11, and all these lots of other things. She changed her first name so that it would be a certain numerological number that fit their program.
Changed her name.
His sister. So I guess
okay.
She changed it from an E to an I, and that changed the numbering on her name. So there's lots of interesting things that happened with that. The date that he died. He came back from Ukraine. He was there for a day. Russia, I guess, was following him and blew up the drone factory that he was at. right after he left, and he flew back, talked to President Trump, and then like 5 or 6 hours later, he's gone. So it's very suspect.
Well, now also Lindsey Graham was very much involved with McCain.
Mm-hmm.
And McCain, as a lot of people know, at his funeral, the flag was wrinkled.
Yep.
Which signifies a traitor.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to look and see what Lindsey Graham's flag.
I think pretty surely it's going to be wrinkled, and that'll be another indicator that he was a traitor. Definitely a traitor. He spent 33 years, I think, with the military, 4 years active, and then reserve as a JAG officer. But I give him credit for serving the military, but his service to the country, he was always pushing wars. He's not going to be missed.
Well, as people know, these deep state people, they're constantly using the military industrial complex. I think what Obama, 22 different invasions or something to that extent, where President Trump, for the most part, didn't want to go into Iran, but it was almost like they had to. I was in Israel when the war broke out.
Wow.
Just on Purim, actually, the Feast of Purim. I had been to Israel 8 times. I hadn't been there in 13 years, and God told me to go. And we went there to do some filming, but also this opening portals, people kind of wonder, well, what is that? And this, Mike, because you and Tracy Joe, are believers, and you understand, the good and bad, the kingdom of heaven and the kingdom of darkness, Satan, Lucifer, his angels. And that's what these deep state people have done. They've used these children, literally the trafficking is their fuel. And so it's being exposed on a massive level. But, when I was over there, like a Feast of Purim, all of a sudden I started hearing the bombs, the alarms, and we were there for 22 days. I had to get out through Jordan.
Wow.
But God got us out. And you've been in bomb shelters, I'm sure, many times. Have you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I was, a lot of times I was in, there was no bomb shelters and bombs were going off. So shots being fired, RPGs, all kind of crazy stuff. Yeah.
Well, and people don't understand, the bomb shelters, if a missile hits your bomb shelter, you're toast. I mean, it's the only thing it protects you from is shrapnel that comes from the dome, when they literally break up these missiles or whatever are coming, it literally, these shrapnel can be very large, as
Sure.
well as the windows can shatter the glass, things like that. That's what it's really to protect you from, is that. But whether people like Israel or not, one thing I'm there is about the land, the people. Jesus walked in that land, and Jesus loved the people. I mean, God loves Israel. He loves the people of Iran. He loves the Middle East. He loves all of them. He doesn't love war. He hates war. So, there's been a lot of propaganda against Israel too. I know a lot of people, there's 100,000 soldiers over in the IDF right now. And one of Chaim Malespin, his father-in-law is Dean Bai, who has the Aliyah Return Center. So they help Jews make Aliyah to return to the land in Israel. But his son-in-law literally is blowing up tunnels, not only in the Gaza area, but also now in Lebanon.
Wow.
And I've asked him, I said, listen, is there genocide going over there? What's happening? Because he is also a Christian. He's a believer in Jesus. But there's a lot of stuff that Candace Owens is putting out, and the same with Tucker Carlson, that they're blowing up these kids. And now there might be some bad actors. I'm not saying that there isn't, but I was there in 2005 when actually the Gaza Strip was given up. Literally the roadmap to peace with Ariel Sharon, Condoleezza Rice, literally Secretary of State, and they gave it up. But then what happens, Sharon goes into a coma, and he couldn't give up any more land. He was in a coma, and then he died. So the Jewish people willingly gave up that land. And it was their most fertile land in most of Israel. So people don't remember that. What do you know about Israel?
Haven't actually been there, unfortunately. I'd love to go at some point. Been all around it. I was in Beirut. I was in Lebanon, right close to the border. But I got to see, what was going on there all around Libya, all around Afghanistan, Iraq. I've been in that region, and it's Iran that's causing all the problems. They're the ones that foment the different groups and so forth. I've been in Yemen, so Hezbollah in Lebanon. Beautiful churches. I mean, we're talking cathedrals are 1,000 years old. I was there during Christmas. It was the most beautiful place I've ever been to during Christmas. The church bells, everything, Christmas lights. They really celebrate it nice. But in the Muslim areas, it's ghetto, complete ghetto. And if it's next to a Christian church, cathedrals, that church is going to burn. I saw a lot of burned out churches next to Muslim ghettos. So it's a mess. So with Israel going in, I'm like, yeah, clean them out. Yeah, so they're a mess, and they're there to take over. Just like I think unfortunately, the Muslims are going to try and take over Europe and America.
Well, we've seen what's happened. When they started opening the countries up. England. I've been to England many times, and it's totally changed. Because these people come in, they open the borders, and we love the people that are Muslim. There's a lot of good Muslims, but there's a lot of ones that are really the ones that really want to take over the country. The Quran is not a peaceful book. Muhammad, and people can get angry if they want, but really was a pedophile. And a lot of things that they do, they just want to basically dominate and take control. That's why, I have friends that's missionaries in other countries, in the Congo and different parts of the world, and India and Pakistan, and they come in and they literally burn down the churches. Unbelievable stories that they don't understand, where the Christians, not that there's not some bad people actually that say they're Christians as well. That's why Jesus said you'll know them by their fruits. Yeah. So Lebanon used to be a Christian nation, and slowly the Muslims started coming in, and then they have like 6, 7, 8 kids, where like a lot of people in America, what is it now? The stat, like 2 children or less. So they're overpopulating people. And in England alone, Mike, there's 250,000 girls that have been raped. Yeah. You heard about that, right?
Yeah, I do. I've talked about it as well. It is one of those things that the Muslims think they are, Allah doesn't care if they're not Muslim, then they can do whatever they want. Now they do this to Muslim women as well. If a Muslim woman, depending on where you're at in the Muslim realms, if you're not wearing hijab or burqa, whatever, you're fair game for rape as well, because you're not you're not sacred, so they can do whatever they want. So I've seen this all over the world. It's very frustrating. Yes, the Muslim people, for the most part, are beautiful people, just like anywhere else in the world. But it seems like the small percentage, take control. They dumb down their population, keep their population fairly ignorant. They don't get very good educations. If they go to higher education, they're basically, learning more about Islam, not things that are useful for them to be successful in life. And they complain about this, even in Kuwait and other areas where there's a lot of money, and no one works. They bring in other people to work, and everybody's driving around in Ferraris and Lamborghinis, and they're horrible drivers. They're always wrecking, but it's okay. They'll get another one. So the government pays every one of their citizens a tremendous salary. It's like $50,000, $100,000 a year, because they make so much money on oil revenue and so forth. So they just bring in slaves, pretty much, Filipinos and Filipinos do the construction work, and the Filipinos to do, the maid work and, taking care of the kids and so forth. And they literally treat them like slaves. It is a very corrupt culture, unfortunately, in a lot of cases. But yes, they can be very good, very, very beautiful people in a lot of ways, but there are some problems.
Well, and what we're seeing now, like different parts in Dearborn, Michigan, you're seeing different areas in Texas. I know Chris Burgard, my friend, and I'm sure you know Chris, just came out with a movie. I think, what was it called, about the Alamo? Anyway, he showed a clip of it at the Fraudster event. But we're seeing parts of places that they literally target and say that we're going to use this as a test and go in there and see how far we can get. And that's why it's important we rise up, everybody. And even the Open the Heavens event that God spoke to me May 2nd, 2020, Mike, we're in California, the first state that shut down. Gavin Newsom shut down California. And I woke up one morning on May 2nd, it was a Saturday in 2020, and I heard the voice of God, which speaks to you in your thoughts. Some people think people are crazy that hear God, but he speaks to all of us. Yeah. It's a still small voice. And I heard him say these words, Mike. He said, "We won't shut up until you open the heavens." And he told me to do 7 baptisms along the western seaboard of the United States, starting at Pirates Cove in Corona del Mar, right next to Newport Beach, where the whole Jesus movement broke out. And God touched this radical hippie evangelist and this conservative pastor, and it broke out into a movement because it's like Lonnie Frisbee, who was the catalyst for that with Pastor Chuck Smith, said, in the church for so long is expecting a certain mold of what a Christian should look like, what a Christian should say, and what a Christian should be. But God is blowing everybody's minds because he's saving the hippies. Yeah. And now ICE is fine. I think they found 125,000 of them. Yeah. So what do you know about the trafficking thing? I know you know a lot of stuff, but I'm just going down the trail that I feel God's leading me down right now.
There's that's beautiful. Yeah. I was looking at that today, actually. I posted on my X account, but there were congressional testimonies and so forth going on, and yes, 125 have been found out of 425 that came across the border. Who was pushing that? It's the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party, I think I've said this for quite some time, it's going to go bye-bye. And I always thought they were just going to get voted out, but they might get taken out and executed because they're responsible for all those children. And they talked about how some of these, unfortunately, these girls are being held in places where they're raped like 7 to 20 times a day, over and over and over again, every single day. No 8 to 12 or 5 to 8 or whatever. No holidays, every single day. It's incredible, and yeah, they're responsible for this. We tried to stop this. We called it out. We couldn't stop it, and now they're going to have to pay for it.
Well, and Troy Brewer is one of the speakers at my event in Branson, and he was on Fox, I think a national affiliate, and he was asked at the end by the news broadcaster and said, "How can this be stopped?" And he looked at him and he said, "What's the cause of this?" And he point blank said pornography. And he basically said it goes from, the babysitter to the baby. Because nobody ever thinks that who would ever be attracted to a baby or a 3 or 4-year-old. Mm-hmm. And why would males in America, because my Freedom Crime movie is not about, I went to Thailand, Mike, in 2017 with a videographer. I got some great footage in Bangkok and Pattaya. They have a 3-mile long walking street that literally has these bars and these girls that are outside, like all in like little maybe sailor outfits, or they're all dressed the same. And it's not legal in Thailand to, God said it's about America. So when I went down the rabbit hole, I didn't know what MK Ultra was. I didn't know any of this stuff, even though I knew a lot. And I was like, what? I interviewed Liz Crokin and I went, what's MK Ultra? I mean, Operation Paperclip, the Nazis came over to America in the 50s. They CIA, mind control, dissociative identity disorder, all this stuff. And then the NASA program. And it was all like run by an agenda. And so it's like people have been so mind controlled from what we've been watching for so long that they just kind of didn't believe it. But now I think people are waking up. Kathy O'Brien was going to be speaking at the MK Ultra hearings.
Yeah.
And then out of nowhere, Kelly, her daughter, was on the porch. They have a nice compound that Mark Phillips, her husband, built. He rescued her out of trafficking. She was getting ready to be taken to Bohemian Grove to be sacrificed, so to speak. And out of nowhere, Mike, this tornado comes down and literally 38 trees falls on her property and wipes out the roads. I mean, house is still standing, but it had to be weather technology that did that.
Yeah.
What do you know about some of this stuff, Mike?
Oh, yeah. I know a lot about it. I've seen it in action and so forth. In the Mockingbird media, I heard about, like you're talking about MK Ultra, and I heard about the Mockingbird media. They had testimony, and the CIA admitted, yeah, we do Mockingbird media. So I'm in the CIA. I see them using Mockingbird media overseas, and I'm a security guy. I'm just like watching, and I'm like, good thing they don't do that in America, because I just looked at the people around there. I was like, how can they not see this? And I realized, like I was talking about earlier, they keep them pretty dumbed down. And then I was like, started looking at our news. I was like, oh, they're just more sophisticated because they're a little bit more educated. So they're doing it to us too. Yeah, I know a lot about that. And the weather manipulation, we've seen it, them burning cities, directed energy weapons. Recently in LA and Malibu, and then of course Lahaina. It's how do they get away with this? How do they get these technologies and so forth? HARP, they steer storms with them, just like you're talking about. So they can do these storm cells. They can spin them up and put them wherever they want them. And there's no doubt that Kathy's house was targeted because all around her, hardly anybody was affected. So it was like her house got hammered and no damage pretty much whatsoever all around her. So yeah, it's amazing. So then I started doing the research on that, and I started seeing that, yeah, these cells can be triggered and directed and focused on one area, just like they did with Kathy. And they've been doing that in a lot of areas now.
Yeah. Well, we saw what happened with that flood, like up in the North Carolina regions. They've never had any type of literally wiping out whole cities, small cities. I mean, we don't even know how many people have been bodies. Unbelievable. But going back into this deep state things that they have in particular, now I want to talk about the story with some of these weapons, like Lindsey Graham, fairly probably easy than taken out that way, just like Andrew Breitbart.
Yeah.
Talk about that. When did he pass away? Like, I remember I interviewed somebody, and they said, yeah, Andrew Breitbart was at Dr. Jane Ruby. I was interviewing her, and she said she was at one of his last events that he had everybody hold up their phone. He said, you're all journalists. He said, you all now have to use this, and you're the news now. He was just on the street, and I think he was supposed to meet somebody, and then I think it was a weapon that they used on him.
Yeah, and they've used that weapon on me as well. Fortunately, it wasn't successful. I mean, it's an energy weapon. All of our organs have a certain frequency, so they can get the frequency of your heart or any organ really, and send a negative energy at it to harm it, to try and shut it down. For me, I kept feeling like my heart was seizing up. And then, because I have really good control of my body, I was able to resist it. But the helicopter was flying right next to me, and then it would fly up and down Pacific Crest Trail where I was, making sure that I was the only one there. And it just kept coming back over and over again and hitting me over and over again.
Where were you again? What part of the world?
I was in California, the Northern California area at that time. And I was on a mountainside, and it was like the trail was like right on a cliff type thing. And if I had stepped if it had, taken me out, because it was a very narrow trail, so mountainside up one side and then a ravine down the other, they picked a perfect spot to take me out. So it was hitting me, and I was like, I've heard about this thing, and I could hear the helicopter coming. You and I have that intuitive thing. So I was like, they're coming for me, because I had my phone off for well over like 2 months on the trail. So I was like, I'm pretty much, they're not messing with me, so I guess I'm good. So I turned it on like the day before to take some pictures and, put it on my Facebook, whatever. And then I hear the helicopter coming. It's like, I should turn that phone on. And then it came up, and it was no markings on it, no lights. And the cockpit, it was one of those little birds, MH6. And it had, you couldn't see into the cockpit. They had it, mirrored. So I was like, I was looking where the cockpit was. I mean, it was like right outside my deck. That's how close it was. It was hovering right next to me. I was like, what's it doing? And then I could feel my heart go. I was like, and I was like resisted. And like I said, it went up and down the trail, because I was way ahead of everybody else on the Pacific Crest Trail. I'm a hiker. I just moved out. Thousands of people do that every year, but I start early and I passed everybody. So I was probably about several days or a week ahead of the next person. So they're just making sure the trail was clear so they can try and take me out. And like I said, if they had been successful, I would have fallen down into the ravine, and no one would have known. I would have disappeared. So they did that like 4 times. And then I got to the end of this ravine area, and I ran into the woods. There was a woody area, and I disappeared myself, went Navy SEAL mode, and it kept hovering. It came back, and it didn't see me anymore. So it started hovering where they figured maybe I probably ran, and they couldn't find me. They kept hovering. I thought they're hovering. It seemed like they were hovering right over me a couple of times. I was like, oh, did they see me? But I didn't move. I know how to do that. And then they just left. And then from that point on, I stayed off the trail for about 2 or 3 days. I just walked, parallel to it, and came back on the trail, and just never.
What year was that?
That was probably 90, probably 98, 99, somewhere around in there.
Yeah, one of my friends, Marilyn, her husband Pat, did the movie The Clinton Chronicles, and this was in the 90s when he was still the president, and I just listened to Kathy O'Brien's book Transformation, like unbelievable, the stuff she went through with Cheney and Bushes, and people wouldn't even believe that people do this kind of stuff. That's how evil that they are. High level people in government, in business, and in entertainment in Hollywood. And so I know that you just interviewed Craig Lund, who I've interviewed him too. He was on Nino's show, and Craig Lund, wrote that book, as you know, Silicon Satan, and it was kind of a faction book. It was true, but he had to use kind of fictitious names and characters, because he talked about, Larry Ellison and Oracle, and how these people don't get to these high levels and positions typically in power unless they bow to some region. And now Ellison's kids are, I think they just bought Paramount or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just bought Paramount. So you guys, we're in a spiritual war, but we've already won. Jesus already said it is finished. So now we need to take authority and move and take action, because we have to believe that we can win, and we use the power of prayer, but just not sitting around. We have to take action. And that's why I honor Mike and many of these ones, Kathy O'Brien, Scott McKay, so many of these guys that are doing something for the kingdom. So anyway, Nino, he was at, of course, one of the hosts of Juan's event, the MC. He had an issue with something that happened to him, and he saw these helicopters flying around. When did that happen?
I guess that's just before he had the incident where he was passing out in the middle of the night. So he got up a couple times to go to the bathroom. The first time, he falls down, passes out, gets back up, gets back in bed. Didn't really think about anything about it. Second time, he was coming back to bed and he passed out, and his partner basically got up and said, "What's going on?" And so she calls the RT, Russian TV, and so I don't think they were targeting him, but he was talking about how Russians are Christians just like us, and the Ukrainians are Nazi, they Satanist. So the Russians identify with our values way more than Ukrainians, but we're backing Ukrainians. That so he's trying to make a point about that, and I think that's probably why they took him out. That's my thoughts anyway.
Well, I've interviewed Scott many times. In fact, he was at my second Open Heavens in Chicago. Juan was there, Sheila Holm, different ones. But yeah, Scott was a good brother. And the thing about Putin has pretty much outlawed children being adopted out of Russia, because a lot of people were being adopting these kids. And Putin actually is more Christian. They've been given a bad rap, but the intel that I know about Russia, they're actually have really turned a lot of the corners. They're actually more Christian than some places in the world, including America. They get attacked a lot in the media. So,
yeah. Well, Ukraine is high trafficking.
Yes,
and that's been exposed for children and for women and so forth. But all of Europe knows that. I've done shows where people have come on and talk about that, but Lindsey Graham went there, and Lindsey Graham has gone there a lot. He likes to go there and spend some time there, and that's he's been dimed out by the DC gay community for going too young. So that's one of the things that we know about him. So another evil aspect of Ukraine and some of these deep state, because they basically use them. They get them hooked on something, and then they use that on them. We saw Lindsey Graham about a year ago in Disney World, walking around with one of those wands or whatever. What's one of those mermaid? So the Little Mermaid, and so he had a wand, and he was walking around. I heard from people that he was drunk.
Well, and right now, as we kind of come to a close, it's a showdown. And right now we're at the showdown, and these people aren't going to go silently off into the night and go oh, it's too bad we've been exposed. No, like a rat that's cornered. I mean, a dog that's cornered. I mean, they'll attack. They're in attack mode. And I know Maria Zach is a friend of mine. In fact, I was the one who had connected her to Nino through Larry Ballard. And I guess she was on your show. Yeah. And, and she's been in the rooms, like this whole thing that's happening in Georgia. Now, the corruption that's being exposed right now in Georgia. I mean, remember in the election in 2020, seeing the suitcases pulled out from underneath the desk when they said the water broke or something and they had to shut down. And there's been a lot of corruption. What do you know about what's happening in Georgia?
Yeah, Georgia's really, it's like I've had people on, lawyers and, people that try to, get elected at different systems all the way down to school boards. They don't let good people in there. They're pretty much controlling that to a great extent. And China involved in Georgia, politics, so forth, paying people off. They pay people off all over the place to control, do the mail-in ballots and cheat like crazy and, get Biden elected. So, yeah, Georgia's one of the worst offenders. Pretty much every state is to a certain extent. If they did a lockdown, they're corrupt. Every state. Now, some states, eventually, let up, like Florida. I just had a fantastic woman on that is a lawyer that's running for governor, and she's talking about how Rachel Rodriguez. She's talking about how they did grassroots movement, where they came out, lawyers and local people, we the people, they came out. They went right in front of the state house, and then they bowed down and said, okay, yeah, we're going to open everything back up. So that's one of the reasons why Florida was one of the only states that opened up, because people got involved. And this is one of the things we have to do. So yeah, Georgia, completely corrupt, being exposed on a massive level, I think, coming up.
We'll look at, even, I know Sheila Holm talks about, Georgia, even the name of the state. You look at the Georgia Guidestones, they
Right.
put up, and that went down July 6th, 2022. I was actually at Maria Zach's event called Nations in Action at the Georgia Tech Conference Center, and Mark Fincham and, Christy Hutcherson and a number of people were there. And I remember on Sunday morning, she asked me, because she knows I'm also in the ministry, we did a few songs and prayed a few prayers, and I felt led, like, let's turn to the Guidestones. Which
Wow.
way's the Guidestones? And it's like, there it is, that way. And so we all turned, and we in the Spirit just said, we command you to come down under the authority of the Lord. And the next 3 days later, it came down. Now, Juan told me it was kind of a white hat thing where lasers, and probably was, but all I know is that it came down on George W. Bush's 76th birthday. Is July 6th.
Louis Herms and I and a bunch of other people, in like a day or two before that happened, I was in Sarasota speaking at one of his events, and we're going to go up to we're going to bus up to Georgia Guidestones and pray there, just like you guys did, and it went down before we got there. That's amazing. All that energy going into that.
Well, and the God literally, like, because we're Spirit led, God
Yeah.
into the Guidestones, and it did. And so another interesting thing is President Trump just turned 80, and George W. Bush just turned 80. Do you know who else turned 80? Was Sylvester Stallone on July 6th.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I look at times and dates, and God has me research like spiritual map areas and things.
Very good. Very good.
And so it was Sylvester Stallone, the whole thing with the 50-year anniversary of Rocky, actually, that came out. And so God is going to take back Hollywood. These deep state people. In fact, 20 years ago, I go, why does it have to take so long? 20 years ago, God said to me one morning, I woke up and he said to me, I want you to build a studio to rival Disney and call it Destiny. And I said, like, wow, I don't know how to do that, nor do I really want to. God uses people that really don't know what they're doing.
Right.
And then he gets the credit. But then Destiny and Disney have the same alphabetical letters, but Destiny is a T, which stands for the cross. So now this film called The Prodigal, all about Lonnie, which there was the Jesus Revolution movie that came out 3 years ago. But now we're going into pre-production on this film. And I'm telling you, God said the greatest movies have yet to be released. We're at a showdown time. And just like Elijah and the prophets of Baal, which they were, sacrificing these children to Molech and Asherah and all this stuff, God does the showdown of Mount Carmel, and all these prophets of Baal were destroyed. But then afterward, Mike, because Jezebel was the one that was tormenting all these spirit of seduction. And so we're in a showdown time that it's going to go down, just like Disney. There's been a lot of corruption in Disney, as you can see. And probably know. Lastly, what do you know about, like, you see these big celebrities? Most of these people that have become really famous, A-listers, so to speak, most of them have somehow taken the deal. Most all of them have taken the deal. There's some good ones. What do you know anything about that?
Well, that's something that Craig Lund has talked about. He said that to get to the higher places in Hollywood, they have to either do a sacrifice of one of their close loved ones, or they have to have one of their children do the sex change. So that's why you see so many sex changes in Hollywood. And then the other ones are doing the sacrifice and, partaking of the adrenochrome and, the flesh of the children and so forth. So this is, being exposed on a massive level. And that's some of the stuff that Craig Lund was talking about in his book, his faction book, where
Silicon Satan.
Recently, I don't know if you heard about that. I had him on a show a couple of days ago. They swatted him. He was doing a Sean Atwood show, and they swatted him, and he's like, they had to stop the show because he had to deal with the cops. And then he was like out in town. He was coming back, and I don't know the circumstances you want to talk about because he's got to, still go to trial on this. But they got him on a couple of charges. They took him to jail. They wouldn't let him have his medication because, they have to check it or whatever, and it takes time on our watch. So they finally hurried things up. He saw the judge, and the judge got him out. $50,000 bail at first, and then it got reduced. He and his wife do a lot of prayer. It's really good. I got it reduced to like $15,000. They were able to get him out. I did a show with him, helped him, raise some money because he's got to get a good lawyer. And so, yeah, it's a tough time for us truthers, sometimes.
Well, and that's why we got to stay the course, fight the good fight of faith. But Craig Lund told me about that. In fact, this is interesting. The writer of my script, the average movie and I will close on this. I don't like to go over an hour. The average movie in Hollywood typically takes 12 to 14 years to make. Some a lot less, like Rocky only took a year or so. He happened to see a fight between Muhammad Ali and this unknown kind of boxer named Chuck Wepner that they thought might run two rounds, maybe 3. And he went the distance. He went 15 rounds. And he even knocked down Muhammad Ali. That's where he got this incentive. Like he wrote the script by hand, like in 3 days. And he literally at an audition just so happened to tell Mr. Chartoff and Winkler, a famous producing agency in Hollywood, about his script. And they sent it over and they loved it, but they wanted to have Ryan O'Neal or one of the main actors of the day. And he held his guns. He said, nope, because I got to play Rocky. And a boxing gym out of Philadelphia said, we'll give you $1.1 million. They think it was mob money, that they were laundering money. Yeah. And basically that movie in 76, according to stats that I've read, was up for 10 Academy Awards and it won Best Picture. And it flipped the movie industry because Randy, who worked a lot with James Cameron, told me that all the movies were really dark. Like, look at all the movies now. Like, this is summer blockbusters. What you have, like Deliverance Day, like Spielberg's like propaganda film.
Exactly.
I mean, it's like, really? And so that's what he's going to do.
There's some interesting things in it. I watched it and I was like, yeah, they're trying to release some information, but that's the way they work. They give you a little piece of truth and then they're like throw in a bunch of, mind control stuff.
Yeah, no, there were some interesting parts. Yeah. Spielberg's a great director, but remember when at that Golden Globe when Jimmy, who was the name of that host? He was a comedian. He started calling them all out. Like you started seeing Spielberg's face and Tom Hanks' face, and they're all he goes, I know you're all a bunch of pedophiles, and they're all like just going like, oh my gosh. And this is what we talked about. Nina was talking about this Isaac Cappy. Right. I interviewed Liz Crokin back in 2017 at the studio and my studio, and she was talking about all this MK Ultra, and then she started talking about Pizzagate and went like, what? But she talked about Isaac Cappy, and I don't know if you ever watched him. I've since learned because he was taken out. And they tried to say, oh, he committed suicide. He jumped off a bridge. Like, right. Now, he was one of the first truthers that was calling out these guys, Tom Hanks and these people. And so, and that's what Craig Lund is doing. I mean, he finally got the courage. I mean, not that he didn't, he wrote the book, but he finally got the courage to speak up. And that's where we have to, as I close, let's put up that flyer for the Open the Heavens. When God spoke to me and he said, we won't shut up to open the heavens. Literally, he had us go to different places to open up the portals over regions because it's a spiritual battle and a component. And that's why, we fight. We're fighting first in the supernatural realm. And that's what Jesus told his disciples. Hey, we got to pray here. Could you not pray 1 hour? So we can do all the fighting we want if we don't have God's backing behind us. But if God be for us, who can be against us? And so, Michael, I'd love for you guys to come. I mean, Scott McKay might be coming. He was at my last one. So let's just see where this is the beginning. It's a showdown. And Kathy O'Brien told me, Michael, that in Branson, because one of her handlers was Robert Byrd, Senator Robert Byrd, 9-term senator. Yeah. And he was a fiddler in the Grand Ole Opry, did whatever. And he liked to fiddle with little kids too. And I'm telling you, she told me that Branson was an area that the deep state used. And what they did is they used the country western bands like Merle Haggard and Charlie Pride and some of these guys that in their shows that they would run in their tour buses, cocaine. And unbelievable. She said Branson was close to Mena, Arkansas. So it was a huge area that the deep state used. So when we're in Branson, what we're going to do is we're going to open the heavens over the region. And I don't try to fight demons. What I do is I just say, it's Psalm 24, Michael, we say, lift up your heads, O you gates, be lifted up, you ancient doors, let the King of glory come in. And all of a sudden, Jesus comes in and boom, you know what? The enemy has to flee. So he does. So anyway, Michael, as we close
I'm laughing because you sound like me. You're a warrior. I love it.
Well, we're not afraid. Listen, I'm not afraid. You can take that down. You can go and get tickets. We do it free because I always don't ever like to charge for the kingdom and for God, but you can get a VIP ticket for only it's $196, but $176. I made it that because it's 1776 was when we the true patriots stood up and they were in war for several years. It wasn't we signed the Declaration and now we're free. No, they had a fight on their hand.
Like 8 or 9 years or something crazy, yeah.
So, Michael, in closing, what would you like to say? What's on your heart? I feel that you being this, this man, this godly man, that's for sure. But let me tell you this. This is one thing, and then I'm going to give you the last. God spoke to me, and He said, "Tell the men, because God loves men. I will never I will never speak evil of men, because God created them, and they are called to be warriors, and they're called to be champions." But He said, "Tell the men that they're not a pimp, a pirate, or a pawn, but a prince and a king." He said, "Women, you're warriors, you're your warriors. You're holy, not hoes." And they have tried to use pornography. In fact, I heard a podcast I thought was really interesting, an SGT report, that when they want to take over a country, they flood it with pornography because then people start getting addicted. And so now instead of just getting attracted to, like, I heard someone say like a Pamela Anderson, whatever in the day, but then they start going a little younger. And before you know it, you're in this position where you start looking at children. And because you think, who would ever be attracted to like a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, because it's a perversion. And so that's why God looks at you as warriors and princes and kings. Mm-hmm. And you can be delivered from that. It's a dopamine. I've heard that the dopamine levels, when you actually watch porn, that it can be as addictive as heroin. And so God believes in you, men, and 30% of women now watch porn. And if you think it's just spicing up your sex life, I'm sorry, but whenever you look at whatever, you bond to that. So you're not bonding with your wife or your girlfriend, you're bonding with the image on the screen. And so you got to rise up, men and women, be strong. We got to say no to porn because it's what's fueling the trafficking. And every girl that you buy or you go and watch porn, most of those girls are trafficked, and most of those girls are not doing this willingly. Mm-hmm. And so, Michael, last word just on anything you'd want to say because you're a true warrior. I really love you and Tracy Joe, your wife, and really believe in what you guys do. So
Yeah, yeah, we love you too, and love is the most powerful force in the universe. You can be a warrior with that love, and that's what I've learned. I learned the warrior skills on a level that most people can't comprehend. But the most powerful thing that I ever learned was how to use love. I would say use it, but to connect with love and then send that love out. And that love will absolutely change the environment. And I saw this over and over again. So prayer, directing that love energy and so forth really, really makes a difference. And I always, talk about this at the end of my show. So thanks for giving me an opportunity to do that.
Michael, where can people find you on, what's the best place to connect with you?
MichaelKJaco.com, and I have a web YouTube channel, Michael Jaco, as well.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, Michael. If you guys could share this, I know on Rumble, they've actually kept me, they're unfollowing people. And I'm just telling you, didn't they get bought out like by BlackRock, like 10%? There's some channels that are growing big, but I know that it's like when you talk about trafficking and stuff, and I'm back on YouTube, so I'm starting to grow on YouTube. But
nice.
I'm just telling you, the Lord said it's not about the views and how many in the pews. He said, just don't stop and you can't lose.
That's right.
And don't drink the booze either, or hit the snooze. No, you can drink booze if you're not an addict. I got into a position that one wasn't enough, two was too many, and came a point that God said you'll never reach your destiny if you don't quit. So I don't think it's wrong to have a glass of wine, but for me, I think we all have to come clean, and I think that we all have our stuff, and I don't throw stones at people. I just say, hey, listen, you can make it. And that's what, as I close out today, those of you who are listening and watching, maybe you have an addiction with porn or booze or children, maybe you're depressed, maybe you can't get out of bed, whatever it is, that there's no pit too deep that God can't pull you out of. And so I'm hearing this little rhyme. God gives me these rhymes. Michael, I think you heard me at Pastor Dave's church give a rhyme on stage when Lewis had me speak along with you. The Lord said, like, this is freestyle. I just have to make it up as I hear it. The Lord said, it's not a crime to rhyme. It's actually a sign, and it's divine. But the Lord said, today I'm speaking to you and I'm telling you to shine, because you are my fine wine that I created on this earth, that when you came to this planet to be birthed, you were made to be great. And God said, I'm opening up a gate for you now to go through. You can turn away from the demonic realm and you can come into the kingdom of heaven and be at the helm of greatness. But God said, you just have to call out to me, the Lord, and I will set you free. And I, the Lord, will give you the key of liberty and justice for all. And all you got to do is say, yes, I'll answer the call, and become a fighter for the kingdom, a fighter for light. And I will now rise up my kingdom, and they will unite, and they will shine, and they will come into a new paradigm of glory to tell my story. So just stay the course. I'm your source, and you just need to go all the way, because by the blood of Jesus, I did pay. I already paid your bail. You can't fail. And you're going to have a whale of a tail when you see what I'm going to do. Get ready. It's a time of breakthrough. So God, I thank you for everybody watching. I thank you, God, for the ones that, Lord, I feel like they're so low. They've done some really dark stuff. But God, I know that you just said, go and sin no more. To the woman that was caught in adultery, go and sin no more. And if you fall, just keep getting up again. Because a baby never walks perfect. He always is, pretty soon they walk. And I thank you that everybody watching this show is redeemed, restored, and renewed as long as they turn it over to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you, Michael. Thanks for coming on. God bless you, my friend. We'll be in touch. Tell Tracy Joe, we love you, Tracy Joe. She's going to listen. So God bless you. I'll reach out about the event in Branson. And you guys, please, you can go to my website, marycrowley.com, and we'll have the flyer up there as well as the tickets. And just you can go visit my site. And really share this show with others, and people, please subscribe and follow and share it with 5 people. And that's what it is. Sharing is caring. So God bless you guys. Well, see you soon.
Hello, Patriots. I'm at Restored Republic via a GCR update for Child by Judy Byington. What comes next? Control blackouts, martial law, mass arrests, a global currency reset, the era of cabal debt ends. Judy note, evidently as Commander-in-Chief, President Trump has activated his wartime powers, deployed the U.S. military and a coalition of 300,000 troops worldwide to make mass arrests of treasonous, Satan-worshipping, pedophile global elites. Be prepared for worldwide emergency alerts, blackouts, and 10 days of communication darkness. The corruption was coming to an end. Trump promised on Monday, July 13th, 2026. What comes next? Nassar Jassar controlled blackouts will roll across the globe. Not simultaneous, not random, timed, targeted, deliberate. Martial law layers will quiet the streets while the old system is silently dismantled. A global military operation. Every blackout, every silence, every disruption, planned to perfection. Mass arrests won't look like arrests. They will show up as sudden resignations, health issues, flight cancellations, and disappearing press events. A global currency reset will shift power from empty paper promises to real, asset-backed value. The era of cabal debt ends. Legacy ledgers will be cleared, zeroed, or fulfilled. The quantum financial system is online. Once the grid goes dark, QFS will override the entire fiat matrix. All corrupted accounts terminated. All clean assets biometrically secured. During the 10 days of darkness, no social media, no news broadcasts, no outside influence. Space Force will guide communication. National militaries will ensure peace. Curfews and movement restrictions will be temporary, but vital. Only one military-controlled channel will remain active. It will reveal everything. Confessions, tribunals, truth, crimes against humanity will be laid bare. The new quantum communication system will replace the surveillance internet. Untraceable IDs, no more spying, no more manipulation. You will witness the collapse of the deep state, the fall of fake governments, and the end of the illusion. This is the controlled demolition of a slave system and the rebirth of a sovereign civilization. Stay alert. Nothing is random. Do not panic. This is not the end of the world. This is the end of their world. You were never just a citizen. You were the storm. You were the signal, and the world will know. What we thought we knew but didn't really know, and now are supposed to know but don't have a clue. With clones, doubles, made-up movies, Hollywood style, and Trump's military alliance throwing more popcorn at us, it gets so confusing. Monday, July 13th, breaking news. President Trump announces urgent address to the nation this Thursday at 9 p.m. Global tensions escalating. July 14th at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. UK time. Kevin and Annette join us on Bastille Day to restore corporate AI tyranny and global omnicide. Monday, July 13th, 2026, verified UN certified ballot from state elections in Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Mississippi, Nevada, and a number of other states prove that Trump won the 2020 election. That fact alone legally takes down the Biden administration, all of Congress, and any legislation that they passed. Monday, July 13th, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says that there will be no central bank digital currency. Under President Trump, the announcement from Bessent's office was significant because the deep state cabal have been trying to set up a non-asset-backed digital currency in order to keep in control of the global financial system that they have ruled since 1913. The gold asset-backed global currency reset that was happening right now was taking away the cabal's money supply and thus their power over the people. Monday, July 13th, 2026, Jeffrey Epstein's butler was arrested in an FBI sting in 2009, where he attempted to sell the client and victim list. Monday, July 13th, 900 people went in witness protection. It states JFK Sr. is dead, but he's alive. The cabal found out that he was alive, so they...
Possible timing. On Thursday, 18 June 2026, at 3, 14 a.m. EST Starlink satellites went fully operational across all 14 global sectors. The Israeli Mossad media satellites, which controlled 92% of Western information networks for 4 decades, lost their ability to manipulate every narrative, election, and market across the globe. Fry. 3 July 2026. Protocols broadcast. All mortgages, credit cards, and student loans linked to usury were frozen for liquidation. SAT. 4 July 2026. Quantum financial keys overrode the legacy mainframe of the Vatican Bank, and the assets of the corrupt were seized and redistributed to the Humanity Reclamation Fund. On Sun. 5 July at 06:13 a.m. EST Operation Mass Arrest 705 began. 847 federal judges, 456 CIA officials, 234 senators, congressmen, and 678 FBI officials arrested. Global liquidity released. Moan. 267 July 2026 Trump. Global military alliance took control of Greenland and the Arctic. 7 July 2026. Operation Freedom Ankara 707 Green major arrests in organized crime crackdown. 24 arrests members of international organized crime gang arrested, true. 11 arrests in California, India-based crime gangs. Real, federal indictments, multiple federal indictments filed. Real, deep state operatives, Pentagon sources confirm detainment of deep state operatives, total arrested operatives. 847 plus. Military sting operation heats up. On 7 July 2026, at exactly 14:10 EST, the communication lines connecting the Vatican Bank to the legacy SWIFT network were permanently severed by the Alliance Financial Task Force. A worldwide debt jubilee and RV of currencies to gold asset-backed activated. Law enforcement shifts to natural law protections under concepts of the original Constitution. The revaluation RV of 209 countries, currencies to be gold asset-backed, comes fully alive. Debt jubilee activation begins for those whose accounts have been cleared. At exactly 06:00 EST on 7 July 2026, the operational authority of the Federal Reserve System was permanently neutralized by an alliance-backed financial task force. The old banking cartels officially lost their primary encryption keys, and the operational timeline for the next 72 hours has been locked into the live network. At exactly 15:44 EST on 7 July 2026, a joint task force of Alliance white hats permanently overrode the primary server matrix of the old NORAD tracking grid. The legacy deep state operators officially lost their administrative clearance codes, and the entire orbital surveillance migrated onto the secure quantum Starlink system. On 8 July, the SWIFT routing hubs in Brussels and London are scheduled for an irreversible protocol disconnect. The central banks will likely report this as a major regional internet blackout or a transatlantic fiber optic breakdown. Reality is a hard quantum override. Any institution failing to meet the gold-backed ISO 20022 standard will have its liquidity clearance certificates revoked by midnight. In early morning EST Thursday, 9 July 2026, Trump's inner circle went completely dark. No leaks, no statements, no explanations. Meanwhile, the war room was fully operational with restricted files unlocked, classified transmissions active, and intelligence missions moving. Thursday, 9 July early morning, Trump's global military alliance took down the World Economic Forum, WEF, in Geneva, Switzerland, and their plans for a total enslavement of humanity, digital ID implementation, collapse of world domestic supply chains. Klaus Schwab and over 400 high-ranking corporate executives and unelected globalist officials were arrested. Also on Thursday, 9 July 2026 at exactly 5:01 p.m. EST, the quantum financial system, QFS, bypassed the central banks as the final encryption keys of the old financial framework were permanently extracted, while the global currency reset was activated. At that same moment, Iran reclosed the Strait of Hormuz. On Thursday, 9 July 2026, the the core databases managing private consumer liabilities systematically decoupled from public identities. The ledger files for millions of mortgages, auto loans, and high-interest credit lines engineered through fractional reserve fraud are transitioning to a zero-balance state. The corporate banks lost their administrative authority codes, leaving them legally unable to enforce foreclosures or collections. Global celebration protocols enabled. Local communities organize freedom assemblies to distribute the first wave of restoration funds. On Thursday, 9 July, an elite cyber command unit acting under global antitrust military warrants forced entry into the primary database complex of Aladdin. Aladdin is the multi-trillion-dollar AI asset algorithm owned by BlackRock that dictated the prices of your food, your fuel, and your rent. The centralized engine that was programmed to artificially buy up entire family neighborhoods, weaponize corporate boards, and manipulate the global cost of living has been permanently defanged from the global core. The encrypted logs coming out of the seized mainframe confirm that over 3.8 million private residential titles and agricultural deeds, systematically sucked into corporate shell accounts over the last decade, have been frozen by the alliance. The ownership vectors are being systematically detached from the corporate registry to be returned to the sovereign population. At the exact same time, the AI pricing engine that engineered artificial economic scarcity is completely locked out, meaning the matrix has officially lost its brain. On Friday, 10 July 2026, the distribution nodes for Tier 4B liquidity officially entered active status under the global enforcement of NESARA/GSARA. The sovereign assets and gold reserves reclaimed from the legacy trusts bypassed the commercial banking grid entirely, routing directly into the wealth pipelines of the sovereign citizens. 14 July 2026, the transition begins. Your bank account won't disappear. Your money won't vanish, but the system that enslaved you will be dead. The Federal Reserve, IRS, and old financial order was finished. D. Global currency reset. Moan. 13 July 2026. Debt clock emergency. America now pays more for debt than defense as the national debt surges past $39 trillion. American Media Group. Moan. 13 July 2026. Boom. SCOTTBESSENT. Trump is waging economic war on British-controlled central banks. It's happening behind the QFSD-CLASSIFIED. The $847 trillion reset, why the globalist elite are panicking, and why Trump's masterstroke is finally here. American Media Group Thursday, 25 June 2026. Bruce, The Big Call Universe IBIZ. Com, 667-770-1866. The new rates change on the Forex Sun. Night and they come up moan morning, so we are expecting Montu's notification for Tier 4B. Us, the Internet Group, WED 15 July could start exchanges. There were an estimated 1.2 million ZIM holders. ZIM is to be used for humanitarian needs, with some for yourself. If you don't have a humanitarian project, you will be given a choice of some international ones to choose from. On Tuesday, 7 July at exactly 14:10 EST, the physical communication lines connecting the Vatican Bank to the legacy SWIFT network were permanently severed by the Alliance Financial Task Force. On Tuesday, 7 July at exactly 15:44 EST, a joint task force of Alliance white hats permanently overrode the primary server matrix of the old NORAD tracking grid. The legacy deep state operators officially lost their administrative clearance codes, and the entire orbital surveillance migrated onto the secure quantum Starlink system. Also on Tuesday, 7 July 2026, at exactly 06:00 EST, the operational authority of the Federal Reserve System was permanently neutralized by an alliance-backed financial task force. The old banking cartels officially lost their primary encryption keys, and the operational timeline for the next 72 hours has been locked into the live network. Sometime in the next 2 days, a blackout and lockdown will become global in all countries of the world. The 17th letter on Telegram as we edge closer to Fry. 24 and Sat. 25 July 2026, The Earth Alliance, in conjunction with Starlink and other military satellites, will unleash the Emergency Broadcast System, EBS. Any day now, the cabal's central banks around the world were anticipating a fiat US dollar collapse. This was necessary for the introduction of the new gold asset-backed currency on the quantum financial system, QFS. Wed 8 July 2026, Marxy. The bond people claim they are absolutely receiving 1% of their payout on Fry. 10 July 2026. A source said it is rolling out east to west, and Asia has already begun. Wed 8 July Wolverine chat. Looks like things are moving 100%. Received news that things have officially started for the bonds. I hear that 4B should be released anytime this week. Judy note. No one knows the exact date for notification of appointments for Tier 4B, us, the Internet Group, to exchange foreign currencies, but deadlines shown in the above timing indicate it to be very soon. We have been told that Wells Fargo, which is controlled by the Chinese elders, the ones who own the gold behind the global currency reset, will send out emails to currency and bond holders worldwide telling them how to set redemption and exchange appointments. It is advised to redeem your foreign currency at an official redemption center, RC, rather than a bank. You can only redeem ZIM at a RC. The dinar contract rate can only be given at a RC, and banks will offer you lower exchange rates than what you can obtain at a RC. You can only set up your new wallet bank account at a RC. It was my understanding that most banks were under control of the cabal and would soon play a different role in the global Re-inhabited Republic for the United States of America on Thursday. 5 March 2026, the cabal foreign banker-owned U.S. Inc. was dissolved, with common law sovereignty installed in the U.S. under concepts of the original Constitution. Admiralty law fraud was forever crushed. On July 4, 2026, President Donald J. Trump would make an announcement of this change to a sovereign republic based on principles of the original Constitution in a massive 4th of July celebration of the restored constitutional republic. The re-inhabited Republic for the United States of America is the actual de jure government that our founding fathers gave us, and which was abandoned in 1871 when a corporation took over Washington, D.C., and eventually every level of government in the country. About the Republic for the United States of America, join President Trump, help him take down the corrupt corporation, and restore the Republic. How to save America Republic for
What we think we know as of Tuesday, July 14, 2026. Monday, July 13th, the DOJ has officially charged 8 people planning a mass casualty event at the White House UFC fight. Using explosive drones, then they plan to shoot people who fled. The legacy media is poisoning people's brains with their lies. Monday, July 13, 2026, von der Leyen, convicted in the Pfizergate scandal, earns €429,600 a year. Lagarde, convicted for embezzlement of public funds, earns €726,000 a year. These are 2 women convicted for diverting public funds who are trying to impose the digital euro. Corruption on an unprecedented scale. That's the price for which they've sold out to Soros and globalism to destroy Europe and end our freedom. Monday, July 13th, boom, the Obama files are worse than we thought. Explosive viral claims spark demands for answers on Tehran, Benghazi, Epstein, Hezbollah, and shadow government network. Election fraud. Nassar Jassar, Monday, July 13th, 2026. We are going to find out President Trump won many of the states he lost in 2020. Ballots that by nature are demonstrably uncertifiable are deducted from the state election totals in 1. Georgia, 2. Arizona, 3. Pennsylvania, 4. Wisconsin, 5. Michigan, 6. Nevada, and a number of other states. We'll see that Trump won those states. The only reason a massive bluff was placed on the country for 6+ years, that included the 4 years Biden was in the White House, was because a coordinated hidden shadow election network across several states engaged in criminal conspiracy together to pretend they had legally certified millions of ballots that were in an uncertifiable condition per both state, federal election laws. This is going to get people jailed. The whole American electoral system, across the fruited plain, is going to be scrapped. So a great American election reset happens to make sure no one can ever do this kind of criminal fraud on the voting public. Monday, July 13th, American preacher uses common sense to explain how far off track America has become. If you can get arrested for hunting and fishing without a license, but you can enter this country and remain in this country illegally, you got a country run by idiots. If you have to get your parents' permission to go on a field trip and get an aspirin at school, but you don't have to get their permission to get an abortion, you got a country run by idiots. If you must show identification to board an airplane and cash a check and check out a library book, but you don't have to show identification to vote in our elections, you got a nation run by a bunch of idiots. If the government wants to take our guns away and then turns around and sends F-16 fighter jets to our enemy countries, take our guns away and give ammunition to our enemy countries, you have a country run by idiots. If your government believes the best way to eradicate trillions of dollars in debt is to spend more trillions of dollars in debt, you've got a country run by idiots.
What's up, Facebook? What's up, Instagram? I'm going live. If we have any glitches, it's because we are currently under bad weather where I am, and it just seems to be the norm around here right now. Playing with the weather, I swear. They're messing with it. But anyways, so just wanted to go live and going to cover a few things just because I see a lot of comments and messages. And it seems like people are still just so confused. I don't know why, but I do know why. It's because we have a lot of people who are you're just listening to everybody and anything that has a set of lips, and that's what's going to get you in trouble. And it's keeping you in trouble. It's keeping your mind in a fog, and it's keeping you from the actual facts. I think what I'm going to start doing is on Sundays, I'm going to start doing things that's more like a foundational talk. And then somewhere during the week, we'll do the current events and what's current, even though I'm going to cover some of those tonight as well. But this is going to be kind of like start doing integration talks of our foundation, our founders, our basic fundamentals of laws, the fundamentals, just basic core fundamentals, and then also correlating those in with irregular warfare, unconventional warfare, all the different kinds of warfare that President Trump is most certainly using. You see it every day. The problem is people are still, you want to hear, but you don't want to listen. You want to react, but you don't want to respond. There's a huge difference. And, guys like me are put here for a particular reason, all right? And so, we're here to help you. So, I think that losing my dad is toned me down a little bit just because I do love you. I do appreciate you. But it's more about you than it is about me, right? So, God gave me ability, God gave me a gift, and I share it with you. But you got to be careful who you're listening to because there's so many people out there, they just want publicity. And you just witnessed President Trump, even though this is all strategically planned, you just witnessed, though, what has hit the media that President Trump just issued some subpoenas out to some people. All right? So just because that's mainstream, it doesn't mean you go replace mainstream with the same bull crap over here in the quote-unquote patriot world. You cannot replace what you deem as the swamp with the same application. And you're seeing a lot of people, quote-unquote, out there in the patriot world accusing people of all kinds of things. They've never been in law enforcement. They've never been in the military. All they're doing is taking regurgitation and regurgitating it again. They're not main sources. They're not key sources. Let me tell you how pathetic the world is. So I put my badge up. People go, oh, how do we know you're official? Blah, blah, blah. I put my badge up, and guess what people did? People called the headquarters complaining that, oh, he's abusing his power. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, this is where we are in society. People want you to produce something. When you produce it, then what do? But they're too sissy to say it to you in person. So the main question is, how do you get decency? How do you get decency back into a society who believes anything and everything that they want to believe? You know, Johnny Cash had a song back in like 1970 or 71. Johnny Cash now, in the 70s, but we're talking about the early 70s. What is truth? And today, where we are, the word truth don't mean a freaking thing. The word facts don't mean a thing. Because everybody, you just listen and believe what you want to believe. You just listen to everything that has a mouth because it sounds good to you. It feels good to you. Pretty sure the Bible is written about those things that feel good to you and sound good to you that ain't really good for you. I'm pretty sure the whole Bible is about that, actually. Which is quite humorous that so many quote-unquote patriots claim to be spiritual, claim to be Christians, but yet they're following the very sly tones out there that the Bible warns you about. And how do you know the difference? The Bible explains that to you as well. But the fruit they bear. And a lot of you out there, you just opening your mouth and putting a bunch of raw persimmons in there. Because it's this simple. Sounds like advertisement? Oh well. It's this simple. This is a #1 best-selling book and part 2 for a reason. They're #1 bestsellers for a reason. Because these are the very strategic laws and orders, plus irregular warfare, unconventional warfare, applications that President Donald John Trump is using. These are not my made-up laws or my made-up orders or my made-up beliefs and, oh, how I want the world to be and, oh, how I see the world. These are they're all President Trump's laws and orders that are invoked. Now, did President Trump pass all those laws? No. But he invoked the orders that have the laws that support them, and that's what this is. Now, this is intellectual property, meaning like I'm the only one who could do this, and it's intricately laid out. I say that to make two different kinds of points, is that if you take every law and order that backs it from 2017 to present day, take the economy out of it, take out all the different things like that, and you just take straight up laws and orders that apply to the military only, you'll come to this blueprint that I have provided for you. That outlines a strategic plan via irregular warfare, unconventional warfare, asymmetrical warfare, and all the variables of those that are vast variables. They can apply in many different scenarios. Then you take the 4 ways that military pairs with federal, executive orders, national emergencies, proclamations, and treaties. They all require the executive branch, presidential. They're all supported by Article 2 of the United States Constitution. You can't have one without the other. So now we get down to splitting hairs. Too many people out there want to split hairs. It's not a splitting hair contest. President Donald John Trump was put here as the face of an operation to put a divider line, not divide the nation, but a divider line where you get to choose what side you want to be on. You want to be on hypocrisy and contradiction, which is what you have from 2016 and prior, or do you want to be a participant in reshaping the future with our foundation, which is basically a resetting of the Declaration of Independence? So you control your destiny. You control this. But words like decency, truth, and facts, they're so diluted out there because everybody and their mama's listening to a bunch of people who 99.9% of them are civilians who've never been in the military, never been in law enforcement. Now, if this was 1775 again, great. Great. We didn't have an established nation. We needed blacksmiths, doctors, lawyers, farmers, you name it. Now we have all that, and we have to put a divider in that. It ain't about who you are from that nature. However, if you're going to go out there and spew a bunch of things that you don't know about, just because you want publicity, a name, and a face, then that's when we have a problem. Because that's the stuff that keeps people over here. It's not people promoting a greater way of life for everyone. It's not people promoting President Donald John Trump, what he's done, what the military does, etc., etc., etc. We have all kinds of visuals of what's going on right now. So I'm going to read a passage from the Military Government and Martial Law book, which I didn't bring with me, but you've seen me put it up before. But you can look it up by William Burkheimer. It's on page 55. All you got to do is go to Google, and there's actually a website out there, a guy named Andy Ryder, or Reader, however you pronounce his last name, but it has the full book on a PDF form, so you have zero excuses. See, but let me just add out there, because I don't know who's watching and listening. I know a lot of you are reading and studying, because you're the ones who made these books number ones, but the ones who aren't, your friends, your family, whatnot, you have got to read what President Trump is the face of. Until you read what President Trump is the face of and what he's invoked, if you're not reading any of that and applying any of that, you're wasting your time. Wasting your time. Page 55 on the PDF, and it's pretty close to the book. But it should be in the page. It's from somewhere between page 40 and 47. All right, in the book, if you've already purchased it. The Declaration of Independence of the United States laid it down as a political maxim that governments derive their powers, their just powers, from the governed. We the people. And that is the right of a people to alter or abolish their powers, form of government, and institute a new one, laying its foundations in such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. This doctrine, however, is no more applicable in the United States than anywhere else. The history of the world illustrates at once its antiquity and universality. How's a tongue twister? When a people have become tired of their government, it has been their custom to change it. And while many governments have been built and perpetuated on force and fraud, perhaps, yet even these may be considered as resting upon the tacit consent of the governed. Society cannot exist without government, which is necessary to preserve and keep that society in order. To be effective, it must be entrusted with supreme authority. This is necessary not for the gratification of those who may be entrusted with the reins of power, but for the safety of that society, for the protection and preservation of which government is instituted. And, says Blackstone, William Blackstone, this authority is placed in those hands wherein, according to the opinions of the founders of the United States, the qualities requisite for supremacy, wisdom, goodness, and power are the most likely to be found. Now go back and read that one sentence one more time. It says right here, society cannot exist without government, which is necessary to preserve and keep that society in order. To be effective, it must be entrusted with the supreme authority. But here's the key kicker right here. This is necessary not for the gratification for those who may be entrusted with the reins of power, but for the safety of that society, for the protection and preservation of which government is instituted. If we didn't have a government, and if we didn't have a military, you want to talk about dog eat dog? You want to talk about chaos? Everybody would be taking the law into their hands. And then the law would be perpetrated on what they deem the law is. So one day the law could be this, and one day the law could be that, and one day we would never have anything consistent and solid for the mass group of people who think alike. But see, what people don't do is people don't study our founders. People don't go back and study our founders. What was their mindset? What was their ideologies? Individually and together. No one wants to break that down. Everybody's lazy. Everybody wants people like me to do it. You break it down. You do it. You do it. That's what you've had all these years. That mindset of you do it, you do it, you do it is why we have looked the way we've looked. Everybody wants to complain about something, but nobody wants to make an application for it. Everybody wants everybody else to do it. And then what do you end up with? A swamp who takes advantage of you, who puts all kinds of taxes on you. And then you end up whining and complaining about the taxes, but you don't want to listen to the person who knows how it all works and says, well, we need you, and all of us to pull your weight here, 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 and here. But you got to learn it too. And that's why our founders separated religion. Now, there's nowhere in the Constitution, you'll hear people misquote that all the time. Oh, they separated religion. No, they didn't write it down like that. They did that just by being humans, going, hey, we're not going to let our religion affect how we make our decisions. They were adult enough back then to not even have to write something like that down. They just did it. All right? So they were the original Nike. They just did it. Just do it. All right? So our founders had this mindset of putting their neighbor first. Now this is tricky because it takes a real clear thought process to just chill out and listen to what I'm saying. Right? Our founders had this mindset of people first. So let's break it down in simplicities. If I'm thinking about you first, and you're thinking about me first, then that's called reciprocality. We're being reciprocal to each other. And if I'm thinking about you and you're thinking about me, and we don't base our decisions on religion and things of that nature, we just go, hey, what is best for society? What is best for that? Everybody wants to live, marry, have kids, maybe not have kids, maybe not marry, but everybody wants a house, right? Everybody wants to be able to live, to be able to eat, drink, marry, be happy, right? Married from the other standpoint. Just be married, right? Everybody wants that. Now, you have bad apples out there. We have bad apples. There are delinquents, and there are, people who don't have a full set up here, and they do things. We'll do that because population's bigger. In every litter of puppies, sometimes there's a discrepancy. It is what it is. It's life. You deal with it. But what a lot of Americans, and this don't apply to the rest of the world because of our great establishment, but a lot of Americans don't want to deal with it. They want somebody else to deal with it. And then it just builds and builds and builds. But when you're not a tough society, you're not tough thinkers, and you're not tough doers, we end up with the bullcrap we've ended up with. Then you end up with all these different people out there that think there's somebody, and oh, we got internet. Oh, because we got internet, then I can have a face, and I can have a name, and I can have a mouth. And the wheels on the bus go round and round, and then you wonder what's wrong with society. So when you put your neighbor first and your neighbor puts you first, you still end up with what you want in life. Now you got to think about that really quick. If you put your neighbor first and they're putting you first, you still end up with what you want in life, because if you two people are working together, then what's good for the goose is good for the gander. But what do we have now? We have a society who does what? They put themselves first. It's all about them, me, I. Then they think about you if they have to, or if they're forced to, or if they're pinned down to, or if they're embarrassed to. There's a lot of variables with that. It's all about I, me, I. And then you end up with what? Chaos. Because nobody wants to look at the general application. Some things are general, some things are not. And our founders predominantly were anti-federalists and federalists. The Federalists wanted more federal power. Anti-federalists wanted more state power. President Trump has taken it to where, and then also all the people around President Trump, the generals, and so many people behind the scenes have done a drawdown of federal, more state power, but they've done more than what our founders did in another way, because we have progressed to where we are with a military, established military, etc. So President Trump said there's only a couple of things that need to be federal. Military is one of those. The rest need to be kicked back to the states. So, let me look at my notes. When you go back to the alternative of not thinking for each other, that's how you end up with a swamp. That's how you end up with the establishment. That's also how you end up with people making you inferior to them. Do as we say, not as we do, which you have seen all your life. And then it's like President Trump's been talking about, communism. We will never be a communist nation. And so many people cannot comprehend that. This is why you need to know how to apply the laws and the orders. But communism is this simple. It's where something is taken from somebody and given to someone else. But those people over there that are receiving, they're in the mindset of going, oh, thank you so much. They're not being told that, hey, we just took this from that group of people over there, or that person over there, and we're giving it to you. And all that does is the same thing the swamp did all those years. That's what they did. They're showing you exactly what the swamp did do. They would go appease this group of people over here. This people would get happy and excited and all happy and all this stuff. This group over here, they're on their way down, or they're down and they've been down. They start rising up, yelling, cussing, complaining, yada, yada. Well, this group over here, they're good. Let's go get them. So it's the same difference as libtards and rhinos, right? They'll go start a fire over here, and they'll yell, fire, 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 fire. And everybody's running to the fire. While everybody's running and reacting to the fire, they're rolling back around here, getting the water hoses and all this other stuff. And then they go over there and put the fire out, look like heroes. Same thing. And it's been this way all these years. And it all it does is create division. Chaos plus division equals power acquisition. It's a cool quote. It's a true quote. Chaos plus division equals power acquisition. So you got that group over here under that power. They acquired that power. This group up here, they're the fire starters. They start the fire, yell fire, 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 run over here. That group. This group over here. It's not supposed to look like that. And then what you end up with is what you see all the libtards out there, and all they're doing is playing this out in front of you to teach people, and you're learning what side you want to be on. You're learning the divider line. You're seeing, okay, this group over here calls us a democracy. We're not a democracy. For the 14th trillionth time out there, we're not a democracy. We're not a democracy. How many times we got to say this to people? We are not a democracy. Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution. So see, this is the principles that people can't comprehend. If you're going to use the word Constitution out of your mouth, democracy is not a word that should be in there as well. It's one or the other. That's how principles work. Or it's a contradiction. You can't be like, oh, we're trying to protect the Constitution. Donald Trump's destroyed the Constitution, blah, blah, blah. We're a democracy. The Constitution says we're a republic. The man, the sole author of that said Constitution, the Constitution that I'm reading from, the sole author, he wrote this, right, September the 17th, 1787. And then from October 1787 to 1789, they had these things called Federalist Papers. Those were promotion papers to go tell the people why they should adopt the Constitution. Imagine that. They had to have these promotion papers going, this is why you should support it. And in Federalist Paper number 10, by the same author of that Constitution, he says how democracies are dangerous. Imagine that. And then you had your second president of the United States, John Adams. You had him telling you that democracies commit suicide. And see, so what the swamp has done to people is confuse people on decency, facts, truth. And it's become a managed democracy. It's called the illusion of choice. And that's why a lot of quote-unquote patriots, oh boy, your numbers drop off when I'm talking about country music. We'd be having 4 trillion people listening, and all of a sudden 5 people listening. Because you get butt hurt because you don't want to be told the facts and the truth from a guy who had Billboard hits before I had #1 best-selling books. I had Billboard hits. As an independent artist, beat the system really bad. And then, instead of crawling back, trying to go back to it, I wrote a book about it. And all the swamp is the same thing. The entertainment industry, Hollywood and Nashville, LA music scene, Miami, New York, all your big pubs for music with the major record labels, they're all a part of the swamp. And if you support country music, mainstream record labels and all that, you're supporting the swamp. All because you don't want to hear. Because, oh, well, that music's my escape. Well, you're escaping right over to the swamp. Imagine that. So what a managed democracy is exactly what the music industry is. They make you think that you discovered these artists. You didn't discover these artists. You were told to listen to these artists. You were told, here's the new so-and-so, and you just hook, line, and sinker right over there. You didn't discover Derek Johnson. Because Derek Johnson wasn't part of the system. So Derek Johnson, as an independent who has the same Billboard hits as all the other artists out there, all of a sudden people don't want to listen to that. You don't want to know how the system works. You don't want to know what you're supporting is a managed democracy, an illusion of choice. They control the consumer, and they tell you who you're going to listen to and who you're going to support. You know how pathetic that is? That's sad. Pretty sad, actually. Because if the whole basis is about music, and music's good, and it sounds good, and it's all, shouldn't you just love music that sounds good? But especially a guy who has the same musicians on my records as all the major record labels. Now, they're not corrupt. They're musicians. They all get paid the same way with me, the same way they do with the major record label artists. All right, they're separate. But I have Billboard hits, the same chart as George Strait. I mean, when I sit here keep naming names, but I don't need to name all of them because it's the same chart. It's the same top chart. It's the top chart in the whole industry. But for independent artists to get on there, it costs $750,000 for one song. One song, $750,000. How many investors do you know out there that will put up $750,000 to beat that? Not many, because it don't happen. So it's the illusion of choice. And that's what Democrats, libtards, predominantly, but also some rhinos out there, that's what they've done to you in every facet. They make you think that, the elections, same thing. They made you think that you were voting, your vote was counting. They go over here and they flip it back here, especially when digital world came about. It's a managed democracy. It's an illusion of choice. They give you the buffet, and you think because you're picking out of the already given buffet that you chose, I don't like turnip greens, but I like macaroni and cheese. They provided both to you. And you think because you don't like one that, I don't like that. And that was my choice. No, you were already given the buffet. So it's the same thing. Same thing. And patriots, you just keep ignoring it. And you're still funding the swamp. And see, the operation's still ongoing. And I know people get tired of that. But it is what it is. 45-47 is an image. It's a visual to show you. 45-47. Well, just because the dash is already there, the 47 is not complete yet. So, are you telling me that if you're 50 years old, right, and you get to, let's say you get to live to be 90, are you telling me that if this thing had to go to January the 20th, 2029, are you telling me that 12 years of your life wasn't worth cleaning out all of the past from 2016 and prior, but also what your mom and dad listened to all these years and your grandma and grandpa? Are you telling me that 12 years of your life wasn't worth the sacrifice of getting it right, cleaning it up, cleaning it out? Is that what you're willing to stand on? Because that's what you would have to stand on if you cannot comprehend that it's not over yet. But the laws show it's not over yet. You get people out there, these guys are just talking and they're dragging it out. No, it's all bull crap. No. It's the law that is currently invoked right now. So why are the Democrats, if the Democrats are even real and alive and in control out there in some capacity, if laws and orders do not matter, then why are they whining and fussing all the time? Why isn't everything hunky-dory? Why are they always using the laws and orders and butchering and twisting it, that's a good word, that's a new word, rattle trapology. Why are they twisting it up? Why? Why is President Trump put in all his posts, anytime he spells out laws and orders, why is it always in all caps? please enlighten me. If they don't matter, please enlighten me. Why he's wasting his time typing that out. Why he's wasting his time as the face of the executive branch. Please explain why laws and orders ain't supposed to matter. The Democrats over there, oh, we got to protect the Constitution and laws and orders and the rule of law. Blah, blah, blah. But so if you're tired of all the bickering and the fussing and the whining and the griping and all this stuff, then why don't you act like it? Why are you still supporting a bunch of clowns out there? Why do you support drama? If you really want to be applicable, why don't you support the man you claim to support? Why don't you listen to him first and the people who replicate him first? It ain't that difficult. So President Trump has this quote. He says a lot. And he said it again just about a week ago. He said, all you needed was a new president. Now I'm going to break that down because that's quite fun. And this is one of my favorite topics. All you needed was a new president. So if all we needed moving forward in life was just a new president, without cleaning house of the past, that's the same as when you sweep dirt under a rug and you just make it go away, out of sight, out of mind. That's the same thing. If you believe that, based on the, let me choose the right terms here, the simplistic viewpoint of the average listener who would hear President Trump say that, and not knowing the laws and the orders that are invoked of what he's actually talking about, and I'm going to break down for you, then out of sight, out of mind does not work, period. It can't work. Because if you sweep it under the rug with the deep state out there, they could just go lay low. Be like, hey, he'll be gone in a couple years, but just lay low, be quiet. Social media is bigger now. The internet's bigger now. AI's better now. All this stuff is available for the public now. All these things. They just lay low. They wouldn't create a ruckus. They'd be like, look, this will pass. They quote the Bible like Christians do all the time. They cherry pick. This too shall pass. That's what they'd be doing. This too shall pass. If all you needed was a new president. So this is also a great scenario why we don't need term limits. Because it goes back to if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, if you become a public official, if the House of Representatives on the state level is doing what they're supposed to be doing and not worrying about what the Senate's doing in the sense of trying to do their job versus, hey, what are we doing to pass the laws for the people, all right, on my side and your side? And if a senator of a state level is doing what a senator of a state level is supposed to be doing, staying in their lane, the same applies with a U.S. House representative or senator. And if the president and the vice president and the cabinets and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, if everyone's staying in their lane, doing what they're supposed to be doing, meaning job application-wise, and I don't mean an application, but the application of their duties, their roles, and responsibilities of that seat of which they're in and what they ran for, if everyone's pulling their weight where they're supposed to and doing what they're supposed to be doing based on why they ran for that position versus just running for any slot just to get in somewhere like people do in counties a lot. People will run for coroner or people will run for some kind of position that's like, you need it, yes, but then all of a sudden you'll see a coroner running for governor. You're like, doing this. Right? See where we're going here? So if everyone is stay in their lane and do what they're supposed to be doing based off of their experience, merit that President Trump's talking about, then what do we have? oh, we have a lot better functioning system. And then if you, the people who don't want to be in public office, but let's say you love laws and orders, or you love, election only and things to do with elections, or whatever it is that suits your fancy out there, if you'll be doing what you're supposed to be doing and knowing what you're supposed to be doing, then you'll be holding all those people accountable, because they are called what? Representatives of whom? Us, we the people. So everyone has a role to play. That's why we don't need term limits. That's why our founders never addressed term limits. Because our founders would have never dreamt that we'd get to a place in society where we're over here having a conversation about people who want to chop their wieners off and things of that nature. The founders never dreamt we'd get to a place in society where people have to sit and talk about what a male and a female is. And entertain the thought. And let that conversation take place. Versus going, if you don't shut up, I'm going to do what Fred Sanford used to say, I'm going to give you a knuckle sandwich, right? Now, I don't believe fighting is the answer, but you got to put the fear of God in some people, meaning you don't allow certain things to take effect, because words have power. And that old saying, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And what have Americans done all these years? Everybody gave it a space, and then what did they do? When they got that little space, I mean, why do they even use the alphabet? Why are they just picking a few letters? Why not just use them all? Just like, all right, 26 letters. We got a queer spot for every one of them. I mean, it's to the point now, it's R-S-T-L-N-E. Can we buy a vowel, Pat? I mean, Jesus. And I don't mean that sacrilegiously. But people, this is not complicated if you're reading and applying what you're supposed to be reading and applying. Everything in life, from the Bible, laws and orders, have to be applicable. They have to be applied. It's not something that you just listen to and then, oh, you feel good for about 5, 10, 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, whatever. And then, let me come right back to this again. You got to read, you got to study the things that matter, the things that apply to us, the governed and the government. It's real simple. Don't complicate it. And then stop questioning things like, well, why would you love this so much? And why are you spending this time, dear Johnson? And why? Somebody's got to be the good guy. Somebody has to be the guy that says, you know what, you can't buy me, but I can wreck your system, and I can expose your system, and I can show the people out there what's been taking place, and I can take all your false accusations and all the other things. Because I get all the same accusations that President Trump gets, and then some. And it's up to you to stop listening to all these people out there who've never been in law enforcement, never been in military, and all they're doing is stating an opinion off of something, a source that's already been put out there. People like me who write books, right? People like me who write these off the top of my head. No ghostwriter, no editor, no publisher. I'm self-published. Everything, right? So that's how you separate the wheat from the chaff, even in the world of podcasters. Same thing. Just because we have the internet don't mean that you listen to everything. You got to let the cream rise to the top. So let's go back real quick. So the term limits, that's why our founders never addressed term limits. So let's go from that to the 1871, the 2016 timeline again. We're only going to do a few little things, but the 1870s, the bar was established. If you went to Google right now and typed in what does bar mean, or, does it mean British Accreditation Registry, it'll say no. What else would bar stand for, and why would it be all caps if there's no application of what bar stands for? Now, Google used to do that. It may be corrected now. Not sure. But the last time, patriots know, every time you Googled it, it would tell you, oh, that's not what it means. That's a conspiracy theory. Well, you know what conspiracy theories are now. All of you family and friends out there who called the true patriots, the dedicated patriots, the consistent patriots, conspiracy theorists. Now you found out they were conspiracy righteous, not right just because they're Republican or conservative. They are righteous because they've been right the whole time. Right? There you go. I'm in a fun mood tonight. 1913. So from the 1870s to 1913, President Trump has said, we have more money in the U.S. than we know what to do with. You know what they used then? Tariffs. Well, why did they use the tariffs? They, the deep state, used the tariffs for not the reason for you, but they did what in 1913? Everybody knows. Federal Reserve and then income tax, right? So they started all these bullcrap games. Well, what happened in 1914 and 1917? World War I, right? And then you just play it from there and go up to 1929, the stock market crash, right? What happened in the 1930s? The Great Depression. People forget about that. Oh, my grandpa never did. My grandpa always reminded me of the Great Depression. So, the Great Depression. Then all of a sudden, Roosevelt, FDR, and his Great New Deal had all these things, and your grandparents, maybe your parents, depending on your age, maybe your great-great-grandparents, depending on your age, started putting in all their money into these pots, right, that they created. Oh, yeah. But what happened? President Trump's creating the same things, but it's new right now. So in 40, 50, 60, 70 years, it's up to your children, their children, and their children, etc., to know what? The laws, the orders, policies, regulations, all these different things. Whether it's good, whatever, bad, indifferent, whatever it is. But it's up to people to know that. What did people do? What did all Americans do from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s? What's happened? Education's gone to what? Pot. And then what took place? All these other people out there that manage democracy and that illusion of choice, those people realize these people don't care. They're not paying attention. Majority are inferior to us. When we walk around them, oh gosh, Lindsey Graham, Charlie Kirk. But you did what? They started doing that versus going, I'm gonna sit right here. I like this guy, but we're gonna find out. I told everybody from day one, anyone who's been following me from day one, you might can find those videos from 4 years ago. I said, what? It's okay. Hold me out right here. Time will prove all. Time always proves all. Relationships, marriages, everything. Time always proves all. Conversations always reveal intent and motives with people. Whether it's relationships, marriages, whatever. Conversations reveal all. Everything is always a consistent basis. You can have 30 years of trust and then one day crash it all. It's always moving forward. And it's always based on consistency. So that's why you had President Trump come in. He's using the tariffs and he's actually trolling what took place from 1913 all the way back to the 1870s. He's trolling them in another manner because he's using the tariffs the correct way. And if you didn't know this, you can know this. I'll have to find the paper. I have the paper. I wrote a paper in 2019 when I was doing my master's degree at Colorado State, my master's in business, my MBA as they call it. All right. And I wrote a paper called Sustainable Unsustainability. And I made my whole paper based on President Trump's tariffs in 2019. And I basically took a chance because sometimes I talk in a you form, and I don't necessarily mean you individually in your screen. I say you, meaning if it's a new person listening, then I'm still talking in first person form one-on-one, because it may affect you that way, the way you're supposed to. Some people need to feel guilty in order to go read and study and be like, you know what, this guy keeps saying the same thing, consistent, repetitive. But then I have emails and messages all the time going, you know what, I finally went and read and studied, and holy crap, why didn't I read and study this whole time? Bingo. So, same thing. I did a U form to all the professors. Now, only one professor was a professor of the class, but just in case the paper got spread around because it had a good point to it, I still wanted them to feel guilty, if they felt guilty. I'm like, you businessmen, you never apply tariffs the correct way. You want to put them on when you want to and then pull them off. They got to be consistent. They have an application. And so the Congresses made them presidential power, presidential authority. All right, Trade Acts of 62 and 74. I want to go read those. All right, but different things. And then 73, which I'm going to get to in a minute, 1973, tariffs. Tariffs are an actual application of a national emergency. Well, why did the Congress in 1973 make it to where you had to declare a national emergency to use the military, but also in a national emergency it comes with all these statute powers? Well, regulating commerce is one of those. Regulating commerce, tariffs, is one of those. So see, there goes that again. When you hear a Democrat, even though most of this is central casting and it's theater, right? Because that's what 45-47 is. The laws outline it. The laws outline a military government, military occupation, continuity government, puppet government, all different forms and all different time periods have these been applied, but it is what it is. You cannot deny it when you go read it, study it, and you break it down year by year, piece by piece, law by law, order by order. It outlines exactly what it outlines. So in 1973, I mean, we're talking about 53 years ago. So when you hear these Democrats and libtards and rhinos out there spewing bullcrap about the Constitution, well, the Constitution supports a military government. The Constitution supports this. In all these years, Congresses have never changed the 1973 quote-unquote War Powers Resolution. It's unconstitutional in the first place on the premise of the founders and Article 1 and Article 2 and Article 3 of the Constitution, because again, if everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, then the president's doing what he's supposed to be doing, the Congress is doing what they're supposed to be doing. If we had to declare a war, they should be cohesive with each other, because that's the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. They're co-equal to each other. So if everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing, they will be in what? Unison with each other. Because you, the people, would be what? In unison. And everybody would be on one accord. And everyone would make the decision together based on what? What's the scenario? What's happening? Whoa, holy crap, what's going on? It's really this simple. Term limits. Going back to term limits. Roosevelt. I love doing this because this is so much fun. I saw a comment about 4 years ago now. Some dweeb out there said, oh, this is the same guy who said Roosevelt served 4 terms. He was elected 4 terms. So he technically served. Now, if you want to get technical, did he serve the full 4 terms? No. But he was elected 4 terms. 4 terms. But then, guess what Congress did in 1951? Put term limits on the president, but not themselves. Whoa, what a coincidence that is. Then 1949, NATO was established. What's President Trump been doing? NATO. But he's been doing what? Hammering NATO. NATO hasn't done this. We've done this. We've done this for NATO all these years. We've done this. We have. But he established the Abraham Accords. And he initially said it's the peace in the Middle East, but now he told you just a few weeks ago, a month or two back, he said, what did he say? What did he say? He said, we got other nations now wanting to join in outside of the Middle East. 1950, Title 10 was established. So what did the president do before 1950? Please, if you're a Democrat, if you're a libtard listening, would you please enlighten us what the president did before 1950? Can you please tell us? What did he use to utilize the military? Would you please enlighten us? You see, so many people don't even know. They have no idea that our founders in the Constitution. So see, the Democrats don't use the Constitution, 1787, enacted in 1789. But then we talk about, like let's say National Guard on the city streets and the civil military operations. Well, that's something newer. That's something that's been written newer after back here, even though military operations were always there, but then the civil military, because we have what? Cities started growing, we started having city streets and city sidewalks and city crimes and things of that nature, so you have to do what? In life, you do what? You adapt, you improvise, and you establish new strategies and tactics for the new variables that you're facing. So it's so humorous that they want to reach back here and talk about the Constitution, which is that old, but then they want to say, oh, this is unconstitutional, do this, this, and this. It's not unconstitutional. You got to know what the Constitution says before you can say anything's constitutional or unconstitutional. It's real simple. You see, the stuff is real simple. All right, let's flip over. I'm rolling. So it's like this. In the military, there's a term called police call. It's called police call. You got to police your area. I mean, you got to watch your area, clean up your area. So this is what happens when people stop. Let me specify, we the people, but not me and you patriots that are knowing what's going on and applying all the time, but the we the people out there who are always saying things they don't know what they're saying. This is what happens when that group of we the people stop knowing their roles, duties, and responsibilities. They stop police calling their area. They stop doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then the burden falls on you and I. And when that you and I dwindle down to a small group of people, as the same term as a minority, versus this mass majority of lame brains and low IQs, and people who are dumber than an ashtray on a kite, I mean, that's what we end up with. And then they overcome us because they're not pulling their weight everywhere. And then you have the problems we've had. So there had to be a divider line put there. There had to be someone who says, look, it's going to be tough? Yes. Is it going to be strenuous? Yes. Is there going to be some confusion? Maybe. And yes, depending on who it is. But someone had to have a plan to go, look, our people are so confused they don't know their head from their butthole. They don't. Most people out there don't know that. So there had to be someone that says, look, yes, it's going to be a little bit strenuous for a little while. Yes, it's going to be tough for a little while, but we have a plan. This plan can do this, 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 and this. We can utilize military law and federal law. And then you challenge all these lame brains out there, but especially the true deep state when it first began, when they were still around. You challenge them to go, all right, you can say it's quote-unquote unconstitutional to the people, but in the end, we're going to show them what kind of people you are. But you all have to let it play out. All this bullcrap, nothing changes until we see arrest. Nothing changes until you change your freaking attitude and learn how to apply these things to prevent the swamp from growing back. You let the swamp grow. You did that. And it may not have been you that's listening right now one-on-one, but it's going to be someone out there who feels, yeah, I haven't applied myself. No, I don't know what I'm supposed to know. Exactly. So get your head in the book. Get your head in the laws and the orders of President Donald John Trump. Get your head in the 45-47 plan and see what's going on and see what all's changing and what all castles have been brought down. And then make yourself applicable where you feel comfortable. But trying to put someone else's light out and thinking it's going to make yours shine bigger and better and greater is not how it's done either. You see all these people out there, quote-unquote podcasters, all they're doing, this, that, and Derek Johnson's this, and Derek Johnson's that, blah, blah, blah. Some punk who's never been in the military, civilian, regurgitating stuff, don't know sheep doo-doo from Shinola. Quit listening to all these fools out there. All you need is President Donald John Trump's plan and strategy and blueprint. And it just so happens I'm the one that wrote it. I'm the one who was put here and wrote it. And it's this thing right here, part 1 and 2. And it's not difficult. It's not even a novel. It's a book. It's like a workbook. It's not even hard to read. And it's all your laws and orders in the chronological order of President Donald John Trump's plan. And part 3 is being written because we're not done yet. But it's going to be basically, obviously, for future generations, for when they get hundreds of years down the road, they can look back. If they ever get in this position again, they can have something there that says, this is what happened way back here. And they'll have their hindsight 2020, but they'll also have the strategies, the tactics, and the playbook that will further them with better success if they ever encounter such bullcrap again. But especially morons. So, the subpoenas. Talking about morons, let's talk about the subpoenas to the New York Times. President Trump's been hammering the New York Times over and over and over and over and over again. All right, so let's look at this. They're journalists, quote unquote. All right, President Trump, what did he do? He invoked the 1798 Aliens Act. Now, he quoted the 1798 Aliens Act. He didn't say the 1798 Aliens Enemies Act. He didn't quote that. He said the 1798 Aliens Act. Now, if you look back on Google, right, because that's our source today, or DuckDuckGo, whatever you're using, doesn't matter. But if you look, it'll tell you that the 1798 Aliens and Seditions Act, the seditions part was repealed in 1800. That don't mean it can't be brought back. All right, you got to look back. It was a time. It was an act for a time of war. So you got to go back and understand that verbiage and that language. And then they called it the 1798 Aliens Enemies Act. But President Trump hasn't said that. He has said the 1798 Aliens Act. And based on his application of that invocation, based on, that's a tongue twister, based on that application of that invocation, because he invoked that, and the Supreme Court upheld that, based on that, and you look at what he has done to NPR and PBS, CNN, NBC, Kimmel, Fallon, and all these people, The View, I don't know why. Well, I know why, because people don't listen to it until it's quote-unquote mainstream. But The View, they're all under investigation. FCC, they're under investigation. No one talks about that. No one's going to talk about it until it hits some big mainstream panel out there of people who just, Candace Owens. You just got to hear it from someone like that. God forbid some Army veteran out there who's showing you all the laws and orders, and here they are invoked and applied. God forbid that God does what he's supposed to be doing by an oath he took. God forbid that. You know, we got to wait till this so-and-so creates some drama over here. President Trump has hammered all these people. And guess when PBS and NPR lost their funding? When the whole world thought, quote unquote, Joe was president. Now, why would quote unquote Joe rip the rug out on NPR and PBS? Now, make that make sense. Where was the uproar then? Where were all the libtards and Democrats and rhinos then? See, there's a lot of things that people have yet to really listen to me about. Because if people would answer those questions, it would answer everything else. And then it would shut down everything else out there. It would shut down all the quote-unquote politics. It would shut down all the quote-unquote, which is real drama, but the quote-unquote people who claim that they're somebody out there, claim that they're good and all these other things, and all they do is try to tear someone else down all the time. Instead of focusing on the laws and the orders of President Donald John Trump, they're trying to spread all this stuff out there, false accusations on me and different people. They replicate the same people who attack President Trump. They're doing the same thing. They're from the same crowd. Those who accuse people the most of something are the ones who are doing it themselves. And so many people are being misled right now by all these mouths out there, from mainstream and quote-unquote now independent, and can't tell the difference. And then people wonder what's wrong with the world. People wonder what's wrong with the United States of America. I tell people all the time, we got the greatest technology in the world, and the better technology gets, the dumber people get. Got it all right there in front of them. The blueprint, strategy, plan, and claim to love military, but when an Army veteran tells you the strategies and the tactics that are all made public, nothing secretive, all public. Oh, God forbid that. God forbid that. So, 1917, Espionage Act. Woodrow Wilson, Democrat. Woodrow Wilson prosecuted 2,000 journalists, pacifists, all kinds of people, but journalists. And Americans, not just journalists, even Americans who were talking about the government and the military and the flag and the military uniform and World War I. 2,000 people got prosecuted. Now, that wasn't a lot considering the population even in 1917 and 1918, but 2,000 people got told what's up, and a lot of them went to federal prison for it. Of course, in federal prison, at least you don't have to worry about dropping the soap there, because they treat you a little bit better in federal prison. You're more isolated in there than you are anywhere. But how do you separate? How do you get decency back? How do you get truth back? How do you get facts back? We can't have a society who wants their own facts, their own truth, and their own decency. We cannot have that. Or it will always stay the same. And so many Americans, when you voted for President Trump, when you saw him roll down the escalator, 2015, then you finally saw his name on the ballot, you voted for him because you claimed you wanted. You were tired of politics, you're tired of all the mudslinging, but you're still participating in it. It don't matter if it's not mainstream. If there's someone out there claiming to be a podcaster or an independent and all they're doing is replicating the swamp, you're replicating what they want to become. They're doing the same thing you claim you were tired of. And even if you unfollow mainstream, but you're following them, you're following the same consistency. I had a drill sergeant in the Army. He said he could call it doo-doo, but he said it D-O-D-O, doo-doo. Doo-doo. Why do you follow doo-doo? You don't have to follow doo-doo. There is a strategic blueprint from top to bottom of every single law and order that President Trump has applied and invoked, especially the military, that outlines a strategic operation, a special operation, using irregular and unconventional warfare heavily, along with executive orders and national emergencies. And when you put that together, it outlines a military government, military occupation, continuity government, puppet government. They're all different applications at different time periods, but now we're rolling almost, we're getting close to 10 years now. So you got to catch up. So it goes back to what is truth, like Johnny Cash sang about. What is truth? Well, truth has to have a basis and a foundation. It has to have goals. Otherwise, you're splitting hairs. You're always just doing this all the time. And that's why you got to go back to military government, publication again, and go back. It says society cannot exist without government, which is necessary to preserve and keep that society in order. To be effective, it must be entrusted with supreme authority. This is necessary, not. See, that's a key thing. If you remember back in the day when you had to go to school and you had to diagram a sentence, you had to break it down. Sometimes you didn't have to diagram it, but sometimes you had to take a highlighter or a pencil or, and put emphasis, like 2 or 3 lines under a word or circle a word, or maybe you had a highlighter and you bolded that. And you highlighted that. It says this is necessary, not. Underline it 3 times. Highlight not. Not for the gratification of those who may be entrusted with the reins of power, meaning they're just power trippers and they want power and they want you inferior to them. Not for that reason. It says, but for the safety of that society, for the protection and preservation of which government is instituted. Well, it can't be instituted without you, the people, being involved. That's the whole point of a government, is to govern the government. That is the whole power of the 3 words, very key 3 terms, we the people. But you can't institute something without that unity, but without basis and foundation, ideologies, and principles. That's why the Declaration of Independence, it says it right here. They're quoting it right here in military government. The Declaration of Independence of the United States laid it down as a political maxim that governments derive their just powers from the governed, we the people. And it is the right of a people to alter or abolish their form of government and institute a new one, laying its foundations in such what? Principles. Well, see, we have become such a nation that don't even have principles anymore. It's a me, I. I mean, you get on Instagram, you get on any form like that now, a Snapchat, which is you talking about a show. I mean, you want to talk about lust and all the females and stuff that are half naked, and it's like, oh, well, I can't help they're here. Well, what if every man started doing that? I guess we'd be able to identify males and females again if every man started walking around with skimpers on or banana shorts, walking around going, well, I can't help it's down here. It's just here, it's just here. There's nothing I can do about it. Look what people have allowed into society. And a lot of these people claim to be Christians, but they're the very ones who are making their brother and sister stumble. Oh, I can't help they're here. So I put a piece of dental floss right here. So President Trump, he's been accused of being a pedo and all these things, trafficker and this and that and this. I mean, all these people out here are accusing him of these things. Well, guess what? I'm getting accused of the same things. President Trump, Eric Trump, Don Jr., etc. So how can you have people out there, and all these people calling themselves independent this and independent that? They replicate the swamp. They replicate the thing that you claim that you want destroyed, and you're done with, you're tired of, the drama, but you're still following it. And you're listening to it. And watching it. And liking it. And sharing it. The internet has a coding system. These apps have coding systems. They have algorithms. The more you share something, the more visible it is. The more you like and comment, the more visible it is. Well, why are you sharing stuff that you don't really align with, or that it's an absolute contradiction to President Donald John Trump? The only reason you'd be sharing something that's an absolute contradiction to President Donald John Trump is because you don't know his own strategy and plan. That is the full visual of 45-47. Now let me tell you what happens with people like these New York Times, quote-unquote journalists and all these people. Right? First thing they're going to do is they're going to go to their go-to. Oh, this is a violation of the Constitution and freedom of the press and that. That's their go-to. The problem is there's people out there who believe that. And it can't be any more false. Because it goes back to intent and motives. What were their intent in writing that content? What were their motives in writing that piece? What was their intent? We're talking about civilians who've never been in the military telling about Air Force One. Oh, well, the Air Force One that President Trump's on, it don't have all the things like some weapon systems that he needs and that. First off, why is that even important? It isn't. Most Americans aren't paying attention to President Trump's flight to and fro. They're watching the speech where he is, and they might listen to, hey, I'm going to Brussels this weekend, and I'm going over here this week. I'm going to New England. I'm going to New Jersey, and I'm going to New Zealand, or I'm going. You might hear that, but most people are not watching to and fro. All right, they're not. So why was that article so important? It wasn't. It's not a piece that's going to affect your life. It doesn't. So when you look at what is occupying space out there right now, when you look at the things that people are writing, what's its importance? It isn't. That article would not make or break your day. It would not make or break your life or anything of that nature. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy, and especially for these idiots. Now, I know this is an operation and an occupation, and it's all theater. But for the people that don't know that, this is the breakdown of that. It's a waste. So when you look at a real-life scenario, and you got people out there who are just wanting a name and a face because internet's the internet. A lot of people go viral daily, but it don't mean that they're applicable to your life. A lot of people are saying things out there. It doesn't mean it's applicable. It don't mean it's a good application. And when we're talking about life and death, and we're talking about your future, we're talking about military being life and death, and all the men and the women out there who are serving, putting their neck on the line for you. And every veteran, like myself, who's ever raised that right hand, there's so many out there. Now, not all know what's going on. That's true. But the ones who do, the ones who uphold that oath all day, every day, year in, year out, the oath never expires, the ones who are reading, studying, and applying, you don't want to, hey, don't disdain their service by being lazy. If you love America and you love the military, you want to give back to the military, read and study. Read and study what's going on. Because there's a man and a woman right now somewhere applying in the military for you. They're under orders of the United States of America, President Donald John Trump, Commander-in-Chief. And they're unique orders. They're unique laws and unique orders that are invoked right now. So when you have all these people out there, whether they're mainstream or independent, and they're either trying to put someone else's light out to make theirs burn brighter, and they're accusing me or whoever it is of the same things that President Trump gets accused of, but they all claim that they're a President Trump supporter. A lot of them do. Forget the Democrats and them, because they don't matter anyway. But the ones that claim to be Republicans, claim to be conservative, claim to be MAGA, claim to be a patriot, if they're accusing me or anyone else for that matter of the same thing that President Trump has been accused of, how are you a patriot? You're not. And too many people, though, in the quote-unquote patriot world, and I put quotes around that because you have to, because if you're a real patriot, you shouldn't be walking around saying you're a patriot. Just be one. You don't have to say it. Just be one. Just act it. Just the way you act that is laws, orders, 45-47. But a lot of these people out there, they just want publicity. And if you address some things, that's why President Trump has been real delicate with certain things. If you address some things, it gives it too much publicity. But if you don't address some things, people run with it. And there's a lot of quote-unquote patriots out there who are running with things that really, they're not conspiracy theories, but they're just false. You're going too far down a rabbit hole. And just because you may like something don't mean that it's correct and accurate. I mean, there are some cases out there where there's some things that are not correct and accurate, but and you can feel a certain way towards it, but it's not true. It's not accurate. So there's so many people out there that'll say, you know, like, oh, you know, Derek Johnson, he's a pawn. He's put in here for this reason, and he'll go away here, and he'll do. Some of y'all are getting way too far down the rabbit hole. I mean, I can tell you where I was born, what year I was born, all the other things. I mean, there's some things that you can just look up, and you gotta go at face value with some things, but then you also have to go with, now, okay, let's throw a funny one out there. I've heard everything under the sun, but let's just show something that's applicable in another way of how you look at how these New York Times people got subpoenas and how independent, quote unquote, out there. So President Trump gets accused of Epstein and pedo and all these other things, right? President Trump is the first president, the first, not second, not third, not 1.5, not almost did, but you know, or came in and perfected something. No, he's the first president to implement a strategy in publications for subterranean warfare, which are all your tunnels, which encase as a whole all forms of trafficking. Because look, anything that you don't know about, haven't seen, etc., then you don't know about it. And that's one of those topics out there that people want to believe but can't believe it sometimes because they, well, why couldn't I see it? And how come I haven't seen anything in broad daylight? Because they don't know what they're looking for. They don't know what they're looking at. They don't know what to look for. I was up in New York 3 months ago, and I was at an event there, and they had a lot of people there talking on behalf of trafficking. Well, when the people in the audience were presented with a microphone to ask questions to these quote-unquote experts, it would be something simple as, well, what am I looking for? If I'm at an airport, what would I look for that would be suspicious? None of these people could give a scenario of what would be a suspicious activity that would alert someone to go, that don't look right. I'm going to watch that, or I'm going to use my cell phone and I'm going to call not airport security, I'm going to call FBI. None of the people could answer. Those are not experts. But then also you got people out there who say, Derek Johnson, he's a child trafficker. If I'm a child trafficker, listen, I got a buddy in Texas, we laugh about this all the time. We talk about this. This is so funny. I got a buddy in California, two of us, we talk about this all the time. Let me tell you how dumb you have to be. If you're someone out there and you're listening to any kind of person out there who accuses President Trump of all this stuff, and Don and Eric and whoever, and me especially, let me tell you how stupid you have to be to believe this. All right, here I am. I'm all over the internet. My IP address it's trackable everywhere. All right, I travel all over the nation publicly. I'm at all these events publicly. All right, which also has IP addresses. Your phone, your cell phones out there, they ping everywhere you go. All right, I've been to Mar-a-Lago, I've been to Trump International, I've been to Trump Doral, I've been around President Trump 10 plus times. All right, personally, privately. All right, I've been with President Trump's people all the time, a lot, talk to him all the time. All right, we're talking about the man. The man. How do you pronounce it? The, or both? The man. The man who established the first subterranean warfare publication and strategy and tactics and everything, and implementing what John F. Kennedy, President John F. Kennedy wanted. He wanted special operations in every aspect of the military. He wanted special operations mindsets in every aspect of every branch in the military. That's how smart he wanted military men to be. President Trump is implementing and finishing President John F. Kennedy's initial goals and strategies, etc. President Trump implements this. Space Force, the whole point of Space Force is that domain of space, meaning technology and communications. We have sniffer planes, P-8 Poseidons, operating all over the U.S. right now. They're typically sub-sniffers, meaning submarines, but they're operating all over the U.S. right now. Rivers, streams, swamps, creeks, you name it, low altitude, as Michael Jaco, former Navy SEAL, SEAL Team 6, the most elite SEAL team out there, has alluded to, that we've been on podcasts where we talk about SEAL teams, right, and P-8s. The P-8 Poseidon has one of the most lethal systems that communicates with SEAL teams. And here I am, I'm a child trafficker, and I'm just rolling around all over the U.S. under President Trump's ICE agents everywhere, FBI everywhere, SEAL teams everywhere, all special operations everywhere, and here I am, I'm rolling around. I must be a kingpin then. If I'm a trafficker, I'm a kingpin because I'm just rolling around, all public, all over the internet everywhere. Everywhere. You are a stupid you know what if you believe that. And you know, I don't want to call people stupid. I have before, but it's because people act like it. It's not because you want to call people, but when you claim to be a President Trump supporter, but this is the man who implemented the first strategy and then his executive orders. And one of his first executive orders straight out the gate that had the first national emergency in it was for human rights abuse, which encompasses all the trafficking. And I've been roaming around since 2017. You have got to be the lowest IQ on the planet to believe that, and then claim to be a President Trump supporter on top of it. And then you claim you won't change, you claim you're tired of drama, you claim you're tired of this, and you want the deep state wiped out, and all this other stuff. Who are actually the ones in operations, taking out the very ones that you want out. You're a sad case if you believe that. You're a sad case. Okay, we won't use the word stupid anymore. Let's use the terms sad case. You're a sad case. And there's no help for you. You're in what they call in the Bible a reprobate mind. You're past the point of no return. You cannot come back to common sense, logic, but also laws and orders and applicability of the man he claimed to support, his plan that he's using, and his operators that are operating it. You're in trouble. So, if you really want change, it requires having a foundation, goals, and application. You can't believe what you want and what you hear that tickles your fancy. You have to listen to the man with a plan. It's one or the other. There's a line in the sand. Choose your line, but choose wisely. Remember what President Trump tells you, be careful what you wish for. So all of you people out there, you don't have to live in hindsight from the standpoint of too many people are still stuck in this whole bullcrap nonsense of, oh, nothing changes until I see arrest. Until you see arrest. You see how selfish you are? Till you see arrest. And then you'll say, well, I have other people who think like me too. You're thinking wrong. Every aspect of our military law, the one you claim to support, especially if you're civilian, every aspect of our military law, if you'll go read military government and martial law publications that the Constitution supports, is based on prevention. Well, if you're doing my dad always said this, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing on the front, then the middle and the end will always be consistent. Now that sounds simple, and it should be simple. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing on the front, then the middle and the end will be consistent. But guess what Americans didn't do? You stop leading from the front, and you start letting all the swamp and all these other people dictate and tell you what's truth and what's decency and what's facts and what's this and what's that and what feels good and what sounds good and all this. And then all of a sudden, you're discombobulated. All of a sudden, you're like the amateur pilots who get flipped upside down in the clouds and they can't tell what is earth and what is sky. And all of a sudden, you start feeling this in your stomach. So all these attitudes out there, this nonsense bullcrap about, oh, nothing changes until we see arrest. You're not preventing the future. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing to prevent the future. Because a lot of these people you claim you want arrested, because you have been lazy all these years and didn't know what you were supposed to know. So it goes back to 2016 in the past, 2017 and the future. There's a divider line there, and it's not the divisional line that the deep state used all those years. There's a divider line, meaning that there is an absolute resetting of the Declaration that has taken place, and you're watching it, and you're still in it right now. So President Trump isn't just a new president enforcing laws and orders. There had to be a dividing line again. Separate. I call it a dividing line to separate present to be the future. Listen to that. That's some rattle trapology right there. There had to be a dividing line to separate present to be the future from the past. So your present right now is going to be the future, but someday that future is going to be your children, their children, and their children's past. It's going to be our past. Do you want to get there and look back and be, hey, I was applicable, I was a part of that. Boy, I read, I studied, I was right there. I was at this rally or that rally, or I got invited to Mar-a-Lago, or I got invited to Trump International, or I got invited to Trump rally, or I was at this event, and we were working for this and that and other, and we were applying this, and we were applying President Trump's laws and orders in our counties, in our states, where it matters? Or do you want to look back and be like, I whined and I complained and I said this about this guy and I said this about him and he wasn't that and he wasn't this and he wasn't that. Turns out he wasn't that. Derek Johnson, guy, he's still living. Like, what are you going to be? You get that choice. And so many of you, if you keep listening to some of these people, what's going to happen is you might end up like some of these podcasters out there. They're gonna incite violence because some idiot, some moron is going to believe it and go, man, you know what? I'm going to take that guy out. And then guess what's going to happen? It may not be me, but someone's going to incite something one day and take someone out or try to. Of course, you're not going to take out a military member. I can go ahead and say right now we're 20 steps ahead of you already. But someone's going to get taken out because of some idiot who just wants publicity and a name and a face and wants to be like, I said this, and I said this first, and I'm the one that said it. Some idiot is going to incite some group or an individual, and they're going to try to take out somebody, and guess what it's going to come back to? It's going to get the person that got them, but it's also going to come back to all these idiot podcasters who just want a name and a face and to say they said something, when all they're doing is regurgitating everything that's already been put out there. They're not writing books. They don't have #1 best-selling books. They're not being invited to Mar-a-Lago. They're not being invited anything President Trump related whatsoever. You got to be careful who you follow. You got to be careful who you listen to. You got to be careful who you associate with. So if all we needed was a quote-unquote new president, elections would have that would have fixed themselves. I mean, I could break down everything, but to save time here, everything would have fixed itself. Because, I heard my whole life, I'm 43 now, working on 44, my whole life, I have heard, it just works itself out. That's what Congress gets paid to do. My whole life I heard that. Before President Trump, before this operation, my whole life, it just works itself out. That's what Congress gets paid to do. Did it work itself out? It didn't work itself out. Elections didn't get fixed. They didn't fix themselves. It didn't work itself out. Millionaire congressmen didn't go, I've never had a career job in my life. I've always been a senator in Congress. I've always been here. They didn't get a guilty conscience and be like, I'm so sorry. I took your taxpayer dollars. All right, we created all these taxes through the years. We took your money, and I got a guilty conscience. Here's your money back. They didn't do that. The millions who saw the open border, they didn't be like, it ain't worth it. The land of the free, home of the brave, the milk and the honey. I'm gonna have a guilty conscience too. I'm gonna think about that border. I may get to the border and be like, you know what? Forget this. I'll just walk back through this desert. I'll go back through Mexico, and I'll go back. I'll swim back across the Panama Canal, and I'll go back to my motherland, and I'll be like, forget the American dream and all this other stuff. Did the border just work itself out? Or would you rather have to listen to the Democrats do exactly what they're supposed to do? If you'll listen and apply, they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be like, they're going against the Constitution. This is unconstitutional. These people are hypocrites. They're supposed to say that. You're supposed to go read the Constitution. You're supposed to go read the principles and ideologies of our founders. You're supposed to read the laws and the orders and go, well, no wonder you're spewing a bunch of bull crap. No wonder you're accusing people of the things you are actually doing. No wonder you're getting subpoenaed. No wonder you're getting shut down. No wonder you don't have #1 best-selling books. No wonder you've never been to Mar-a-Lago. No wonder you've never been in the New York Times for being an extremist, for being in Mar-a-Lago more than 3 times in a year. Me. No wonder. I may have to bring my dance back. I may have to bring back the dance. I may have to bring it back. I'm on the road tonight. Everything would just fix itself. If we just needed a new president, and laws and orders don't work, and laws and orders don't matter, and strategies and tactics of the military, it's a bunch of hogwash. That Gary Johnson, he just keeps talking about this stuff all the time. Well, everything would just fix itself then. Because everybody would just finally be like, I'm tired of arguing. Let's fix this. Love is love. Did it fix itself? So why not understand or comprehend, whatever word you like out there? You got people out there. That word understand is a bad word. No, it's not, because some of you need to understand. You need to get on your knees and shut up and listen to people who know. What's going on? So if you would comprehend what's going on, you would realize that some of this stuff, the accusations, false accusations. It's just all part of it, because those people in all those categories, mainstream and independent, they are replicating the swamp, or they are the swamp, or they're trying to rebuild the swamp back, and they're going against the very identity of 45-47. And every American is supposed to be for our nation, for our government, and for our military. Every American. And what do we have? We have a bunch of fools in this nation. So, patriots out there, the whole operation was to drain the swamp. But it wasn't just to drain the swamp. Let's say there's 4 million reporters. Let's just say that. Let's say there's 4 million journalists. We know there's however many it is. But let's just say that there's 4 million. Let's use the number 4. All right. That don't mean you replace 4 million morons with 4 million more morons just because they're independent. No, the whole point of this was to bring everything back down to a quell. Bring this back down to a small number. I mean, this is going to be the most prolific thing I say tonight, probably on this little topic here. But why would you want to listen to someone, anyone, mainstream or independent, why would you want to listen to someone who does not have direct sources from the president himself? The whole point of covering the United States government, United States military, which consists of your president, your vice president, and your congresses, the whole point of that is to know exactly what they are doing. And so many, even patriots, are listening to all these different mouths moving out there, telling their opinions, but they're in a seat that doesn't have anything to do with military, government, President Trump, 45-47, nothing. And what those people do, listening to those people, all those people are doing, if it's not you, but all those people are doing, all you're doing is wheels on the bus go round and round, round and round, round and round. You just stand in the same mud hole, spinning your wheels. You don't have any mud grips. You don't have a four-wheel drive. You just spinning your wheels. You're listening to people who, okay, it tickles your fancy, but it has nothing to do with what's going on lawfully. What's going on militarily, which is still lawfully. So, if the deep state had political hold still, or power, but I like to use the word hold, because if someone's holding your attention, then they should be holding it for the right reasons, which is the whole point of why President Trump is hammering all these organizations. So, like when he subpoenaed these New York Times, or these journalists, all of a sudden it was like that's the first thing that's ever happened that President Trump has done with the mainstream media, and it's not. PBS, NPR, CNN, NBC, Kimmel, Fallon, The View, all these people, AP News, AP, the Associated Press was banned from Mar-a-Lago in the White House. And it made a little bit of news. I'm the only one that's been really covering it a whole lot. And all of a sudden, New York Times journalists get subpoenaed, and oh gosh, the whole left lights up, the whole Democrats lights up, and rhinos light up, and then people go, finally, President Trump, finally? Where have you been? You hear that sound? Remember Donkey from Shrek? Well, that's the sound that should be amplified everywhere right now, because you should be hearing that, because people are finally getting their heads pulled out of their rear ends. Where have you been? So if the deep state, you don't hear these podcasters out there too, oh, the deep state did this, and we did this, and the white hats did this, and the deep state did this, and now the deep state did this, and the white hat's going to do this. And that. If that were true, from a real-time standpoint, now most of the ones that I know that say stuff like that, they're talking about it from a strategic standpoint, that this is a theater that all your normies, and I call them the target audience now, not normies, but all your target audience are watching. If the deep state still had political control to some capacity, they would dominate the airways. They'd be losing their minds constantly. They wouldn't be cool, calm, and collect like Hillary is. Even though they're saying stuff against President Trump, they wouldn't be cool, calm, and collect. They wouldn't just be like, well, Donald Trump's not doing this, and he's not doing that. It wouldn't look like that. If President Trump was truly destroying their quote-unquote democracy, it wouldn't look like that. Because he hasn't destroyed it, he's obliterated it. All right? Destruction, some things you can come back from. Obliteration means disintegrated. He has obliterated the deep state. And if you were reading what you're supposed to be reading and applying and comprehending, but comprehending and applying what you were supposed to know and what you can visually see that President Trump has done, if you block out all this other stuff, all the drama, all the negativity, all these accusations, and all this stuff that's just like basically watching reality TV on a little phone, if you'll get rid of all that out of your life and apply what President Trump has done and only what President Trump has done with laws and with orders and the military and strategies and tactics, if you would apply that only, you would see it. You would see the deep state ain't done nothing. And Hillary and Obama and all these people, okay, you can't comprehend. Well, they're posting on their Twitter, on their X accounts. Why? If they're posting it, you don't see them. Or did you see them post that? Are you watching them with their hand and their phone posting that? No, you're not. But the things they're posting about, like this simple thing. Recently, when the UFC fighter called Michelle Obama a man. Okay, that is a line in the sand. And if you're any kind of woman and you got any kind of man, you would want your man to be like, all right, why ain't you, well, you ain't said nothing. Like, I could just see black people and I'd be like, you ain't said nothing. You better get on there. You better tell these people I ain't no man. Right? Come on, women. I mean, what kind of man would a man be if he don't get on somewhere and say, listen here, you just crossed the line. My woman ain't got no balls. Simple. There is some things you got to fight for. There are some things you just go ahead and get your head knocked off for. If it was a fight, a fist fight, there's some things you just go ahead and go, all right, you know what, I may get my butt kicked, but you ain't gonna call my woman a man. You ain't gonna call my wife a man. There's some things you get your head knocked off for. You just go ahead and be like, all right, where's Obama? Where's he at? He's posting. Yeah, he's posting. He's not posting. See, so if you would get into strategies and tactics of what President Trump is the face of and lose all the other stuff and get into the reality of the laws and the orders, but more specifically this military you claim you love and support, if you would get into the special operations of the military, the strategies and tactics of irregular warfare and unconventional warfare, it's unconventional for a reason. It's not conventional. It's not boots on the ground, kicking in a door and smashing someone's face like that. They did do that in the subterranean trafficking rings, and they're still doing that in Mexico right now, all of our special operators down there. But it's not regular for a reason either. It's irregular and unconventional. And once you apply the visuals of what President Trump has shown you, same thing with Iran. Iran's the same thing. It's a conflict. It's not a war. It's not a war like that. But see, there's one of those terms again: decency, facts, truth, war. You've heard it so long, you can't differentiate a war and a battle, a war and a conflict, a war and an operation, a war and a strategic operation. You just hear the word war. Oh, bombs and this, that, and other. We're at war. That's the problem. Terminology, definitions, verbiage, grammar, punctuations. So if we go back to the deep state again, if the deep state had power, political hold, then how come these are the things that people cannot answer? They cannot answer. When I say people, I'm talking about podcasters who accuse and low IQ, don't have two nickels and rub together to make a penny. All right, we're talking about those kind of people. How come, if Joe Biden was real, how come he didn't have the same? Let's put him in a real president. We'll put him in a real tense. I'll play devil's advocate for a moment. All right. Let's just pretend he was real. All right, and pretend he was really president by laws and orders. Let's just pretend. If Joe Biden was real, and if Joe Biden was president, he'd have had the same power as every other president. He'd have the same authority as every other president. Why would he continue 11 executive orders with 11 national emergencies attached to them? Not just all the other executive orders that didn't have a national emergency that quote-unquote Joe never revoked, never had a constitutional review of it to see if it was unconstitutional or not. No, we're just talking about the 11 executive orders with national emergencies. Why would he continue those? Every single one of those executive orders with national emergencies are unique to the very topics of irregular warfare, unconventional warfare, and also the federal portions of it and how they would connect militarily and federally. Why would Joe continue those? So that goes back to your principles. That goes back to hypocrisy and contradictions. You can't continue all these executive orders with national emergencies that apply to the 45-47, 2017 to present day, which includes 21 to 25. You cannot continue all those unique applications of law and then turn around and claim that President Trump is a Nazi, a king, a dictator, and destroying democracy. You believe in one or the other. This is that simple. Don't complicate it. National emergencies have unique applications of authority. Tariffs, regulating commerce, tariffs, restricting telecommunications. Oh, those tie in. Those tie into your NPR, PBS, CNN, AP News, New York Times. Restricting telecommunications, 47 United States Code, Section 606, the Communications Act of 1934 and 1996. The president in a wartime, Supreme Court clarified that for you, that President Trump could do what? Invoke the 1798 Aliens Act. That's a wartime order. A wartime order only. And it's been invoked. It hasn't been rescinded. So that means it's still invoked. And if it's still invoked, that tells you you're still in a wartime. But you've been in a wartime. So anytime you see anything to do with the media, the mainstream media of that nature, you can apply those same laws. the National Guard. You had quote-unquote Captain Mark Kelly complaining last week about, oh, we got to do this to make sure President Trump don't abuse his powers in the National Guard, blah, 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 blah. Well, it should have also read, if quote-unquote Joe was real, and if quote-unquote Joe was president, it should have said the same thing for quote-unquote Joe from 21 to 25, because the National Guard, the only Title 10 orders and Title 32 orders that have been invoked to present day. There was one that President Trump did do in 2025, but it was an application to a certain region. But all the border, every bit of the border, 2024 at the border, February 2024 at the border, the only Title 10 in place at that point that applied to the border, Proclamation 9844, February 2019. So how did that order go from 2019, 21, 22, 23? It wasn't unconstitutional then. It's that simple. So why did Mark Kelly, if they're real, and if they're really operating, if they're really in control and really in their seats and really in power, where were they then? Where were you then? That's the better question, see? Now this falls back to the people. Mark Kelly's just one dude, real or not, he's one dude. Where are you? Why aren't you understanding simplicities of application of the whole reason we have a military, laws and orders? So if President Trump is a dictator, Nazi, and a king over here in 25, 26 for using the National Guard, why wasn't quote-unquote Joe a Nazi dictator and a king for using the National Guard at the elections of 22 and 24? President Trump, Executive Order 13848 with the National Emergency, September 12, 2018, for election interference, September, November, the National Guard, 30-plus states were deployed for the polls in 2018. All of a sudden, in 2020, same thing, 22 and 24. Well, that's consistency. So if President Trump is a dictator, Nazi, and a king, then Joe Biden's a dictator, Nazi, and a king. Then you got all these rhinos over here. Oh, Obama was back here pulling the strings, and Joe Biden was just a puppet. Well, they're Obama, and all of them. But then you got patriots out there now that have jumped ship with President Trump, and you got rhinos who jumped ship and saying that President Trump's one of them and all this other stuff. Now you got another group of idiots who have stirred up because they don't know laws and orders of the applications of what President Trump is the face of, 45-47. I'm not a law and order guy just because it's a law or an order. Laws and orders of 45-47, the strategic operation, the 45-47 operation. So, 2024, let's go back to February. President Trump, he just hammered again when he was over at the NATO. He's talking about, Kamala, the border czar, who never went to the border, never seen at the border, never called border patrol. All right? President Trump, the only person.
Judy note, the U.S. corporation is dead. Donald Trump is now commander-in-chief, restoring America's sovereignty. Maritime law is over, freedom reigns. The biggest revelation of 2026 has arrived. Wake up, America, the revolution has begun. The biggest revelation of 2026, the U.S. corporation has fallen. Stop everything. Let this sink in. The United States corporation is no more. This isn't just a story, it's a seismic shift, the kind of event history books will mark as the turning point for humanity. The facade has crumbled, and the truth is out. America was never what you thought it was. With the U.S. corporation dissolved, Donald Trump has reclaimed his rightful role as Commander-in-Chief, CIC, heralding a new era for the American people. This isn't about politics, it's about freedom. It's about breaking the chains that have shackled us for generations under the guise of governance. And it's about you finally waking up to the lies that have enslaved us. A ship crash, the symbolic and literal event, has triggered the overturning of Crown maritime law, returning America to common law and handing the power back to where it belongs, we the people. America unveiled, the collapse of a corporate illusion. What if everything you believed about your government was a lie? What if the United States of America, the so-called land of the free, wasn't a republic at all but a corporate entity designed to exploit and control you? Brace yourself, because that's exactly what's been revealed. For decades, researchers and whistleblowers have whispered about this hidden truth. The rabbit hole begins with 4 critical documents, the first pieces of evidence exposing the U.S. government as a corporation. This isn't theory, it's fact, grounded in law. The dissolution of this corporate entity means the end of voluntary slavery, the end of indentured servitude, and the beginning of true freedom for Americans. On Tuesday, July 14, 2026 evening, expect the unexpected. Turn on notifications. On Wednesday, July 29, 2026, the Golden Age begins. Nizar/Jez are in motion, the wealth of the world returns to the people after everything changes forever. The biggest shift in human history, the system collapses at midnight. For more information, see Sunday, July 12, 2026. Breaking, the biggest news of 2026, U.S. corporation dissolved, Trump takes command, restores America's sovereignty as maritime law collapses. What the mainstream media didn't tell you about what happened this past week on the global financial reset. On Sunday, June 30, 2026 at exactly 14:10 EST, Trump's global military alliance financial task force severed communication lines connecting the Vatican Bank to the cabal's SWIFT network. 10 sovereign military divisions finalized the synchronization of the Emergency Broadcast System, EBS, via the secure Quantum Starlink network. The secret ledger networks were now offline that had historically routed trillions in unbacked global wealth through private offshore entities, fraudulent debt bonds used to control sovereign nations for centuries. On Saturday, July 4, 2026, with the U.S. Treasury under white hat control, the U.S. Treasury bypassed the Federal Reserve's clearing system. The physical transition of the new gold-backed U.S. note, USN, began in 14 Federal Reserve branches across the country. Over $847 trillion in fiat deep state debt was marked for deletion. At the same time, on Saturday, July 4, 2026, the U.S. Space Force secured control over all 456 U.S. energy grid substations. By Wednesday, July 8, 2026, according to Trump QFS Center ISO 2022 on Axios, Trump announced about Iran, "We'll hit them hard tonight," but the interpretation was actually, "hit them equals target deep state financial networks, not just Iran." Hard equals simultaneous military and financial operations. Tonight equals Wednesday, July 8, 2026 at 14:47 UTC. Operation Straight Reckoning 0708 and QFS Activation Operation Financial Reset 0708 went live. Operation Financial Reset 0708 resulted in 847 financial accounts of the deep state assets being frozen, 234 banking officials arrested, 456 shell companies liquidated with off-books operations shut down, and $678 trillion in fraudulent assets being recovered and redistributed to the people. By Saturday, July 11, 2026, according to Trump QFS Center ISO 20022, Trump's global military alliance had arrested 5,811 deep state operatives, money launderers, non-government operation directors and offshore bankers who funded human trafficking rings, rigged elections and biological suppression programs, executing 14 federal and state warrants simultaneously across 97 countries, the largest synchronized law enforcement operation in human history. In that same Saturday, July 11, 2026, Operation Trump's global military alliance intelligence seized $293 million in 5,811 SWIFT accounts and then injected the quantum financial system override codes into the central banking system mainframe. This made the old financial system completely compromised from the inside, plus 97 countries legally bound to the new gold/asset-backed global financial system. On Sunday, July 12, 2026 at exactly 3 a.m. EST, Protocol 19 entered its final, non-reversible completion phase. The Federal Reserve System lost its primary routing certificates, the Global White Hat Alliance finalized the hard override, and the operational logs for the next 48 hours were locked into the live backend. The old Fiat SWIFT network data hubs in Brussels and New York were permanently decoupled as all transitioned to the Quantum Financial System, QFS, where every single transaction pool, international settlement and corporate clearance was forced to execute through clean, digital asset-backed channels. Every currency digital asset line anchored to verified, audited physical precious metals. The UN-backed, Synthetic liabilities that the cabal used to manipulate energy and housing sectors in real time. Private funding lines for the major mainstream media cartels hit zero. Expect major bank branch closures and restricted digital access notices. They cannot generate paper debt to balance their sheets anymore, and their keys have been permanently revoked. Twos. July 14, 2026 night. Expect the unexpected. Turn on notifications. Wednesday, July 29, 2026. The Golden Age begins. Nizar/Jazar in motion. The wealth of the world is returning to the people. The chains of the financial elite are shattered. After today, everything changes forever. Are you ready for the biggest shift in human history? The system collapses at midnight. B. What we thought we knew, but didn't really know and now are supposed to know but don't have a clue. With clones, doubles, made-up movies Hollywood style and Trump's military alliance throwing more popcorn at us, it gets so confusing. Sunday, July 12, 2026, at various fast food chains across the nation such as Chipotle and Panda Express, people have been reporting that RFID microchips, which is supposed to be for tracking animals' GPS locations, have been found in their rice. These may have been a deliberate attempt by the government to add an extra layer of surveillance. Sunday, July 12, 2026, the pharmaceutical industry made $1.48 trillion last year. Not from cures. From repeat customers. They don't want you healed. They want you dependent. RFID microchips, which is supposed to be for tracking animals' GPS locations, have been found mixed into the rice at fast food restaurants such as Chipotle and Panda Express. Sunday, July 12, 2026, the Trump admin has officially unveiled hundreds of fraud indictments, blocked tens of millions of dollars going out the door to fraudsters, and prison time is now being levied. This is what I voted for. Keep pushing. WH Fraud Task Force Vice Chair Andrew Ferguson. FBI Director Cash and the FBI, they have been chasing some of the biggest fraudsters that the United States has, from the top 10 most wanted list, all over the world, Somalia, the Philippines, Turkey. 4 years ago, we had an FBI that was prosecuting grandmothers for praying the rosary outside of abortion clinics. And today, the FBI is chasing fraudsters down to the ends of the world. The wins are just getting racked up every day, and it's because of President Trump and Vice President Vance. Project Odin martial law on Telegram. Sunday, July 12, 2026, the Department of Labor has started dozens of investigations and is preparing to issue multiple subpoenas. J.D. Vance, today, I'm proud to announce that the Federal Department of Labor has started dozens of subpoenas and investigations into foreign fraudsters who are trying to take advantage of the H-1B visa program. Here's a simple principle, ladies and gentlemen. American jobs ought to go to American workers and not foreign fraudsters, and the Department of Labor is fighting back against it. See possible timing. On Thursday, June 18, 2026 at 3:14 a.m. EST, Starlink satellites went fully operational across all 14 global sectors. The Israeli Mossad media satellites, which controlled 92% of Western information networks for 4 decades, lost their ability to manipulate every narrative, election and market across the globe. Friday, July 3, 2026, Jazara/Nizara protocols broadcast, all mortgages, credit cards and student loans linked to usury were frozen for liquidation. Saturday, July 4, 2026, quantum financial keys overrode the legacy mainframe of the Vatican Bank and the assets of the corrupt were seized and redistributed to the Humanity Reclamation Fund. On Sunday, 5th of July at 6:13 a.m. EST, Operation Mass Arrest 0705 began. 847 federal judges, 456 CIA officials, 234 senators/congressmen and 678 FBI officials arrested. Global liquidity released. Monday to 6, July 7, 2026, Trump's global military alliance took control of Greenland and the Arctic. 2s. July 7, 2026, Operation Freedom Anchor 0707 Green major arrests in organized crime crackdown. Black small square emoji, 24 arrests, members of international organized crime gang arrested, TRUE. Black small square emoji, 11 arrests in California, India-based crime gangs, REAL. Black small square emoji, federal indictments, multiple federal indictments filed, real. Black small square emoji, deep state operatives. Pentagon sources confirmed detainment of deep state operatives. Total arrested operatives, 847 plus. Military sting operation heats up. On Tuesday, July 7, 2026 at exactly 14:10 EST, the communication lines connecting the Vatican Bank to the legacy SWIFT network were permanently severed by the Alliance Financial Task Force. A worldwide debt jubilee and RV of currencies to gold/asset-backed activated. Law enforcement shifts to natural law protections under concepts of the original Constitution. The revaluation, RV, of 209 countries' currencies to be gold/asset-backed comes fully alive. Debt jubilee activation begins for those whose accounts have been cleared. At exactly 6 o'clock EST on Tuesday, July 7, 2026 the operational authority of the Federal Reserve System was permanently neutralized by an alliance-backed financial task force. The old banking cartels officially lost their primary encryption keys, and the operational timeline for the next 72 hours has been locked into the live network. At exactly 15:44 EST on Tuesday, July 7, 2026, a joint task force of alliance-wide hats permanently overrode the primary server matrix of the old NORAD tracking grid. The legacy deep state operators officially lost their administrative clearance codes, and the entire orbital surveillance migrated onto the secure quantum Starlink system. On Wednesday 8 July the SWIFT routing hubs in Brussels and London are scheduled for an irreversible protocol disconnect. The central banks will likely report this as a major regional internet blackout or a transatlantic fiber optic breakdown. The reality is a hard quantum override. Any institution failing to meet the gold-backed ISO 20022 standard will have its liquidity clearance certificates revoked by midnight. In early morning EST Thursday, July 9, 2026 Trump's inner circle went completely dark. No leaks. No statements. No explanations. Meanwhile, the war room was fully operational with restricted files unlocked, classified transmissions active and intelligence missions moving. Thursday 9th of July early morning Trump's global military alliance took down the World Economic Forum, WEF, in Geneva, Switzerland and their plans for a total enslavement of humanity, digital ID implementation, collapse of world domestic supply chain. Klaus Schwab and over 400 high-ranking corporate executives and unelected globalist officials were arrested. Also on Thursday, July 9, 2026 at exactly 5:01 p.m. EST the Quantum Financial System, QFS, bypassed the central banks as the final encryption keys of the old financial framework were permanently extracted, while the global currency reset was activated. At that same moment Iran reclosed the Strait of Hormuz. On Thursday, July 9, 2026 the core databases managing private consumer liabilities systematically decoupled from public identities. The ledger files for millions of mortgages, auto loans, and high-interest credit lines engineered through fractional reserve fraud are transitioning to a zero-balance state. The corporate banks lost their administrative authority codes, leaving them legally unable to enforce foreclosures or collections. Global celebration protocols enabled. Local communities organize freedom assemblies to distribute the first wave of restoration funds. On Thursday 9th of July an elite cyber command unit acting under global antitrust military warrants forced entry into the primary database complex of Aladdin. Aladdin is the multi-trillion-dollar AI asset algorithm owned by BlackRock that dictated the prices of your food, your fuel, and your rent. The centralized engine that was programmed to artificially buy up entire family neighborhoods, weaponize corporate boards, and manipulate the global cost of living has been permanently defanged from the global core. The encrypted logs coming out of the seized mainframe confirm that over 3.8 million private residential titles and agricultural deeds, systematically sucked into corporate shell accounts over the last decade, have been frozen by the alliance. The ownership vectors are being systematically detached from the corporate registry to be returned to the sovereign population. At the exact same time, the AI pricing engine that engineered artificial economic scarcity is completely locked out, meaning the matrix has officially lost its brain. On Friday, July 10, 2026 the distribution nodes for Tier 4B liquidity officially entered active status under the global enforcement of NISARA/JESARA. The sovereign assets and gold reserves reclaimed from the legacy trusts bypass the commercial banking grid entirely, routing directly into the wealth pipelines of the sovereign citizens. Tuesday, July 14, 2026, the transition begins. Your bank account won't disappear. Your money won't vanish. But the system that enslaved you will be dead. The Federal Reserve, IRS and old financial order was finished. Global currency reset, Sunday, July 12, 2026, the QFS declassified, The $847 trillion reset, why the globalist elite are panicking and why Trump's masterstroke is finally here. Thursday, June 25, 2026. Bruce, the big call, the new rates change on the Forex Sun. Night and they come up Moan morning, so we are expecting Moan 2's notification for Tier 4B, us, the internet group, Wednesday 15th of July could start exchanges. There were an estimated 1.2 million ZIM holders. ZIM is to be used for humanitarian needs, with some for yourself. If you don't have a humanitarian project you will be given a choice of some international ones to choose from. On Tuesday, 7th of July at exactly 1410 EST, the physical communication lines connecting the Vatican Bank to the legacy SWIFT network were permanently severed by the Alliance Financial Task Force. On Tuesday, 7th of July at exactly 1544 EST, a joint task force of Alliance-wide hats permanently overrode the primary server matrix of the old NORAD tracking grid. The legacy deep state operators officially lost their administrative clearance codes, and the entire orbital surveillance migrated onto the secure quantum Starlink system. Also on Tuesday, July 7, 2026 at exactly 6 o'clock EST, the operational authority of the Federal Reserve System was permanently neutralized by an alliance-backed financial task force. The old banking cartels officially lost their primary encryption keys, and the operational timeline for the next 72 hours has been locked into the live network. Sometime in the next 2 days a blackout and lockdown will become global in all countries of the world. As we edge closer to Friday 24 and Saturday July 25, 2026, the Earth Alliance in conjunction with Starlink and other military satellites will unleash the Emergency Broadcast System, EBS. Any day now the cabal's central banks around the world were anticipating a fiat US dollar collapse. This was necessary for the introduction of the new gold/asset-backed currency on the quantum financial system, QFS. Wednesday, July 8, 2026 marks, the bond people claim they are absolutely receiving 1% of their payout on Friday, July 10, 2026. A source said it is rolling out east to west and Asia has already begun. Wednesday 8th of July Wolverine chat, looks like things are moving 100%. Received news that things have officially started for the bonds. I hear that 4B should be released anytime this week. Sunday, July 12, 2026 secure logistics drop, Tier 4B appointment protocols and confirmed recovery steps. The operational window for the private redemption phase has officially cross-referenced with the live backend network of the quantum financial system. The validation servers have processed the master registries, and the secure infrastructure is fully set for deployment. Do not expect the mainstream financial channels to broadcast these instructions. The corporate banking cartels are in total logistical paralysis because their administrative authorization over public asset distribution has been permanently revoked by the Alliance. When the SafeLink code drops on your interface, you are entering a synchronized, high-security operational sequence. Here's your unedited, step-by-step checklist extracted directly from the Tier 4B Intel Team backend, the pre-appointment drill, what you must prepare now. Floral diamond emoji, identification blueprint, you must carry 2 forms of government-issued identification, passport, driver's license, or state ID. The QFS biometric matching nodes will verify these against your secure quantum ID profile instantly. Floral diamond emoji, asset documentation, gather your original historical bond notes, ZIM, dinar, etc., in clean, physical format. Sort them by denomination and serial tracking lines.